welcome to the board and welcome to those of you in the public. Appreciate you joining us here this evening. And I will open us up with a prayer for guidance. Heavenly Father, we give you grateful thanks for a beautiful day and a beautiful celebration this past week of our liberty. And we're exercising some of that liberty tonight, self-governance. And we just pray that we'd have wisdom and knowledge and understanding to be able to make good decisions, be able to articulate thoughts and views, and Lord, also to be mindful that we serve the public, and Lord, as we go throughout the days and the weeks ahead of us, that Lord, we continue to focus on how we can help, how we can assist, and how we can better that which you've given us here. Thank you for our constituents, our residents. Bless them and their families, schools, churches, businesses. We ask this all in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Join me now with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Like everybody's here tonight. Did many of you go away last week? I know, Gary, you did.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody else? No? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, John?
Yeah,
always.
Wonderful time.
Favorite holiday?
Right.
The Bears.
Yeah, right. I brought back as my souvenir a cold from one of my grandkids, so they always seem to share pretty well.
I think you had a bear on the deck of your...
We had bears every single day, with the exception of one. And after a while, I was like, we can't send the kids outside. It's down in Tennessee. I mean, we have to be out there with them. And I'm scared too. It's like what, right? I'm out there to watch them. I'm watching, my head's on a swivel, but...
Thankfully, you're here to talk about it, though.
Yeah. It was fun. It's crazy. Okay. We have the agenda tonight that we need placed before us. Is there someone here who'd like to make a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
So move.
Support.
For it.
All right. Comments about the agenda tonight?
I do have one question.
Mm-hmm.
We're approving the agenda for the Utilities Committee meeting minutes, but I have a correction for those. We have a meeting later on tonight. So how does that work? So like, if I correct those minutes at the Utilities Committee meeting, how does that work if we approve them at this meeting before we have a meeting to approve the minutes at that meeting?
Very true. And we could address it right now if you've got something.
I knew you were going to ask me on my spot. Okay. We're asking to start requesting a 10-foot easement down Kennewa Avenue. And I believe it's in there from Jackson to 4th. It technically should be from Berry to Jackson along Kennewa Avenue. The streets, it's an east-west street to a north-south street. And it really should be, the 10-foot easement should be along Kennewa from Berry to Jackson. Does that make sense, Rob? You see what I'm talking? From Berry to Jackson.
I filled in at that meeting, and I recall that discussion.
Yeah. We just gotta correct the streets we're looking for. So that's why I was like, what's the point of order? Because we'll have the utilities committee meeting after that. I would correct it there, but then we just already approved it here, which really isn't correct because we haven't had a chance to correct it because we haven't had a meeting since then. That's correct. But because we have water, people that are hooked up there, we really don't have a proper easement because they put a 10-foot bike path down Kennewa and our water lines underneath, and we need to what was the word I used? I don't want to acquire. Request a 10-foot easement from Berry to Jackson, so in future we can look at putting a water line down there.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And it's a matter of correcting the typographical error.
It is. It's just
I don't think we need a motion. I think it's more a matter of just scrivener's error.
And I'll get it corrected in the next meeting, but I just was asking a point of order because I don't remember we've had this before, so. I said, other than that's all I had.
We'll recognize that scrivener's error and it'll be changed or corrected.
Yep. Okay.
But thank you. Anyone else on the agenda? Any other thoughts? Hearing none, all in favor of tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the agenda is approved. Item 6, communication letters and reports received for information. All right, number 7, public comment for action items remaining on the agenda. So we've got a few more than we've had here in recent weeks tonight, and I'm going to repeat for those of you who haven't been here for a while that this is an opportunity for you to step forward to the microphone here and address the board if you wish for up to 3 minutes. We just ask that you state your name and your street address, and you're speaking now to issues that are on tonight's agenda yet. If you're saying, well, I didn't come prepared knowing what was on that agenda, maybe you can pull it up on your phone while the first person speaks, if there is someone, and note what is on there. But if you came specifically about an item on the agenda, this is your best opportunity. Not that you can't speak at the conclusion of our primary business tonight. There'll be a second public comment period, and maybe you want to comment at that time about something you heard during the meeting or something completely unrelated to tonight's agenda, something you've noticed within the township, etc. So, is there anyone who wishes at this first public comment period to step forward and speak to the board? Sir.
My name is McCloskey. I live at 3540 Baldwin Street. I am requesting to this township to look into turning lights at 36 and Baldwin. Talked to the road commissioner about it, and he says it doesn't require it. But in June, we had 2 bad accidents. One person, lady got hit, she died. And another one, car got sliced. I can't control people turning, and they try to beat the light. So another car got wiped out. Never got hit in the front. It got sideswiped and just wiped out the whole car. I also talked to your person that you hire that run the recyclable deal over here on Rogers. He had just talking with him, he had his child hit with a car on a bicycle. Now, school is going to start here this fall at that new school. People around there cannot have to take their kids to school because they're not far enough away to ride a school bus. So I think with all that's going to happen coming forward, it's going to be nothing but a big cluster deal with kids and everything else. And then the constant traffic going up that street to go into Grand Valley State, that's another deal. Besides going down on 48, they use 36 and go up to Fillmore and cross and whatever up. It would be nice if the township would look into seeing about getting some turning lights in.
Okay. Thank you. No one injured, that's for sure.
Well, somebody died.
Yeah.
Not a deal. It's going to happen. Kids. I mean, even person you hire to run the recycling place over there, his kid got hit on a bicycle. This not recently, but so his kid got hit on a bicycle. Was lucky he didn't get hurt. Something's got to, in the future, something's got to be looked at to do something.
Thanks, sir. So,
and I talked to the road commissioner about it. He said they did a survey, and it doesn't require it. Already, had a death. So I think it's important to have that because that traffic is not going to slow down. It's going to get more and more. So that's my 2 cents on that part. Okay, another thing too, with all your pavement that you've been going off the blacktop, which is fine. You've got all these big trucks. They come up over the hill by the water tower. The light is turned red on them. They run their Jake brakes, and it's just noisy as hell. Now down on 48th, when you come going east, you've got a sign there that says no braking. It would be nice if you have a sign put up by the water tower that they don't brake. They don't use them Jake brakes that make so much noise off the semi trucks. Now,
thank you.
According to the road commissioner, you people have to request that, and he will put it up.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Couple thoughts. Thank you. Couple of thoughts. That was I gave him grace. That was speaking out of turn. That's not on the agenda this evening. So if you have other comments of a general nature like he made, we want to hear those, but we'd rather hear those during the second public comment period. The other thought I had was that for those of you on utilities, you mentioned several things that might up your antenna to decide whether or not, a sign such was mentioned, or sounds like the road commission's already weighed in on 36, which makes it tough since they're the final arbiters of whether something like that would change. But if you felt strongly enough, imagine as a committee you could try to persuade us to add our voice to that with the road commission. So is there anyone who would like to speak to tonight's agenda items before I close this first public comment period? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Kendall Grable, 3256 Box Elder.
Welcome.
Like all of you, I'm also a public servant, so thank you for your time to the township. I'm here today to speak against the proposal to invest a significant amount of time and resources into building a pickleball complex in Georgetown Township. I believe this is bad for several reasons. And the study being referenced is biased for personal gain. And what I just observed here is biased for personal reasons as well. The residents of this township deserve neutrality in their studies, and I do not think we're getting it with the study that's going to be presented. First, pickleball is a relatively new sport. It was invented in the 60s and it's only become popular recently. There's no guarantee the popularity of this is going to continue into the future. It's a fad, it's a niche right now, it's super popular, a lot of people like it, understood. But like Jazzercise or Crystal Pepsi, fads die. Second, there are other more popular sports that could benefit from additional resourcing. For example, we could use the money to improve the tennis courts to make them multi-purpose to include pickleball courts at a variety of locations in the township, not a specific spot on 8th Avenue, which more people could benefit from. We could invest money into more popular sports like basketball, soccer, a township driving range. These sports are more popular than pickleball. If we felt we had to spend the money, let's spend it where more people could get value. Third, a local business recently spent a significant amount of money investing in a multi-use volleyball and pickleball complex in the township, big enough to host classes and tournaments and other events. The township should not be in the business of competing with private enterprise by using taxpayer money to accomplish the same goal. If local pickleball associations think that the sport warrants more investment, they are free to gather funding on their own and build their dream, not at the detriment of other taxpayers. Fourth, the township recently completed a survey asking residents what they'd like to see. Pickleball was mentioned less than 1% of the time. The overwhelming majority of residents wanted U Board to act more reasonably and responsibly with their tax dollars and lower their taxes when possible. In conclusion, I believe the pickleball court is a bad idea. The proposed location will cut into the beach that's used by many and loved by many that's been there for a very long time. There are beautiful old-growth trees that are going to be cut down to make room for this pickleball complex. I think it's a waste of money, and it's being pushed by special interests for personal gain. I urge you to vote against the proposal or end the proposal and do things that are more reasonable and responsible for the township. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gribble. Anyone else? Going once? All right.
Here, and I live at, what's my address? 4532 Chandler in Georgetown Forest.
Yeah.
About 3 years ago, I came to John Schwam about pickleball courts being put into our never-used tennis courts at Rush Creek. It would be an easy conversion back then. I guess I just want to say I disagree with this man. He had some great points, but I do not believe it's a fad like Crystal Pepsi. When I started playing pickleball, it was older people, and I was kind of the young person, right? Now, I love it and I hate it, but we have got, we got 7-year-olds playing now. I mean, we got teenagers. My college kid is playing, and she plays with all her friends. It's not going to go away, and maybe he doesn't understand. I wish he invited you to play pickleball. Have you ever played it?
No, you got to adjust the board. Yeah.
The board, please.
Pardon?
You have to adjust the board.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You can chat with him
Anyway,
later.
it's such a social sport, guys. It unites little kids and grandparents. It unites moms and dads with their kids and with their... I don't know. I just can't say, I don't know how you cannot see that as a benefit for the community to have all these people gathered together. Plus, you should put more bike paths in, but that's another point.
All right, thank you. Ma'am.
Barb DeYoung. I live on Cedar West in Georgetown. I don't have prepared comments like he had, but there seemed to be some animosity coming from the person with the first comments. I don't understand the animosity. My husband's been playing this game for 15 years. For people that, especially the old, we were playing against a lady who was 81 years old last Saturday. We played all around the country. We played in South Carolina. We played in Florida. In Florida, there's a place, they have 64 courts, and you still wait 20 minutes to play in between games. Clearwater just put in 30 courts. So other teams are putting in huge facilities and spending lots of money around the country, and I think that, not saying that that's what we need to do. We're not putting in 64 courts. We're not putting in 30 courts. We're talking about 10 courts.
12, I think.
12. So I think the money is well spent, especially with us having the money. And for all generations, it would be a very positive thing to do.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Janet Martin, 4582 Hidden Ridge Drive. I want to second what we've been hearing here. A couple things I do disagree with what was said is I don't think this is a for-profit. There's no one that's going to make a profit off of you putting this pickleball court in. I live near the high school or the junior high. I go up there every night. There's never anybody on the tennis courts. There's nobody playing basketball. You walk by that pickleball court in Hudsonville, and it is jam-packed every night and every day in the morning. There's people waiting for spots. There's people waiting to get on the courts. I don't see that on the basketball courts. I don't see that on the tennis courts. It's not a bad thing to get your citizens of your community out to exercise. Ball's a great way to do that. I don't believe it's a fad either. It's, to their point, 15 years in playing. I've been playing for 5 years now. My kids are playing, my 30-year-old, my 20-year-olds. I don't think it's going to go away. And I don't think we need to put more money into the tennis courts and the basketball courts. Those are supported. The schools pay for those. And there's plenty of them to use. And there's just not that many pickleball courts for us to use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon Dykema, 7360 Torrey Drive.
Welcome.
I just want to make a comment about stepping on the foot of a private business owner that built a facility that has the indoor courts. People don't play pickleball indoors unless they have to. In the summertime, that place is going to be empty, and it is empty, and I'm sure he understands that. We will use it in the winter time when we can't play outside, but most people like to play pickleball outside. They like to enjoy the weather, be outside, and they don't want to pay. I mean, they want to play on courts that are outside that they can use for free and just, be with other people.
Good. Anyone else? All right, now we're rolling.
My name is Norman Wright, 8920 Victor Avenue. I've been a resident here in the area for 38 years. I've seen lots of improvements. The township has improved parks tremendously in the time period that I have lived here. All in a positive way, I would say, overall. Any public use of funds for a specific use is always for a specific use and really a specific group of people. I don't care whether it's a splash pad. I don't know how many of you have participated in the splash pad. I haven't, but I see a lot of people use it. It's great. I think the stat I saw recently, 16 new pickleball courts are constructed every day in the country. Every day. That's a pretty remarkable number. During the pandemic, and to now, the participants in pickleball has almost tripled in 3 years. Though it started in 1965, it is not the same. Now there are professional teams. We have professional athletes that have bought into these teams. It's now starting to be televised on TV. This is not going away. But it's a thing, again, that was mentioned, a social activity. I used to play a lot of tennis. Tennis, you had to get your foursome together, make an appointment, go play. Oh, one of them didn't back out at the last minute. This, you show up, intermingle with everybody that's there. You meet lots of people. I think it's one of the best things for a community I've ever seen. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Kelly Dykema, Torrey Drive.
Welcome.
I would just like to speak on the younger side of the pickleball community, that it is really growing with younger adults, and it is one of the things that you do actually see young people outside doing, which is pretty cool. And I will say, like, I know a lot of the older people in the room here. It's a great relational building cross-generationally. I'd also say I go to Grand Rapids to play sometimes, and they have a really nice facility there, and it is amazing the different just groups of people that come in to play together, and you just make friends with people you would never meet otherwise. And it's also brought in a lot of business for restaurants and other things in the area because people make a day of it. They come play for a few hours, go out to lunch afterwards, they're in the area. So I think it's really good for the community, both socially and socioeconomically. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no one else, we'll close that initial public comment period. Thank all of you. All right, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
Support. All right, any comments among the board? Items that we have included in tonight's consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And it is approved. Item number 9, scheduling budget meetings. We need to look ahead, as we always do about this time of year, to get our calendars fixed on certain key dates for getting ready for our 2024 budget. So each of you has been presented with several dates and probably had a chance to check your own calendars. And I would ask if there's anyone who would like to place before the board by motion the recommendation of these dates. Or meeting dates, I should say.
So moved.
And support. Supported. It's going to go through finance, draft of the board, tentative adoption, public hearing. Date-wise, we all good with what we've got here? It's pretty on point with what we've done in years past, timing-wise. Okay. Hearing no objections, any further discussion of any kind? It's just a matter of getting it on the calendar. All right. So all in favor of approving the motion with these various dates for the budget meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, those dates are set. Be sure to add those to your calendar. Number 10, second reading and adoption of ordinance number 2023-05, sidewalk ordinance revision. You recall this came in front of us, I want to say in May, or was it just in June? But it was recent. And as we know, we had the first initial reading, now we've got the second. It's just a clarification, as we discussed the first time. Wasn't a lot to it, but it's something that was noticed, I think came out of, did it come out of utilities? Originally?
I don't think so.
Did it? Yeah.
Finance, it says.
It's finance.
Okay, okay, hello. Any further thoughts tonight? Someone wish to place this, first of all, before us by motion to approve the second reading and the adoption of the ordinance with these revisions?
So moved.
Moved.
Support.
Supported. Okay, any further discussion about this? Just a clarification, as I said. All right, hearing none, this is a roll call vote because we're changing an ordinance, so I'll turn to our clerk and ask that he call the roll.
Mr. Grassman?
Yes.
Mr. Bellick?
Yes.
Treasurer?
Yes.
Supervisor?
Yes.
Clerk is a yes. Mrs. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Schwam?
Yes.
Okay, and it passes 7-0. All right, number 11 is the second reading and potential adoption as well of a revision to our fireworks ordinance, kind of a timely part of the year for this to come up. First of all, just a motion to place before the board a second reading and adoption of the ordinance as proposed, and then certainly discussion among us as to whether this is something we all feel, or at least the majority of us feel strongly about.
I'll move.
Support.
Aaron, supported by Becky. All right. So, any thoughts you didn't share the first time around? Anything you've heard perhaps from the public since then, or anything that came up last week possibly? No?
One thing that showed up on, it was a really old post on our Facebook page, like from 2019, that had the comments turned on. But right around 4th of July, somebody commented on a 2019 post about fireworks, that they were frustrated with us that Juneteenth wasn't on our list of federally recognized holidays. And when I saw that, I commented, you're commenting on a post from 2019, and that wasn't made a federal holiday until 2021. But that is a federal holiday now. So I just throw out to all of us that perhaps we should consider it as part of our fireworks ordinance. But I know that part of the goal with this fireworks ordinance was to bring it to match some guidance from the state, and I don't know if that date was included in guidance from the state.
So it touches on Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July, kind of the beginning of summer, middle of summer, end of summer. Thoughts about that and any of the comments that were made by Becky just now? I don't know if it was exclusionary from my perspective, like to other holiday that might arise at colder parts of the year, or times when you'd say, well, people might feel like celebrating, but don't necessarily think of fireworks.
Well, we have New Year's. Under Section 2, letter A, it's December 31 through January 1 is one of them. So we have New Year's, Memorial Day, 4th of July.
Okay, yep. No, good point.
You were Googling, I'm just going to look over your shoulder, you were Googling state holidays, right? Is Juneteenth listed as a state of Michigan observed holiday?
It is observed by the state of Michigan. Yeah.
I just think that if we've kind of been using in the past state and federal holidays as our guideline, then I would hate for us to accidentally be exclusionary, just because this is a relatively new holiday as far as being recognized by the state and federal government.
Can I share something there?
Yeah.
A lot of this was our ordinance was behind what state law is. Right. It's behind currently. And if we don't change this, then it opens it up. We have all national holidays, which that includes Washington's birthday, that includes many. So what the goal of this was to shrink it to match state law.
Okay.
And what is provided. So state law has those dates. It's not saying national or state holidays, it's just saying those dates. So it was to get us in compliance with state law, because as it reads currently, national holidays, again, can be Juneteenth, Washington's birthday, all those things. So it's to get it in compliance with state law.
There were fireworks in my neighborhood on Juneteenth, and I was just like, I wonder why they're doing fireworks. And then I looked at the calendar and was like, oh yeah, which was an oversight and ignorance on my part. But I am trying to grow from that experience and just bring it up for conversation. So.
It's funny because I was not for this sort of thing because it's come up in the past in terms of shrinking the amount of usage. I kind of, when it passes, like, okay, enjoy. But I will say, I don't know about the rest of your experience, but I've only ever received negative comments about the amount of days in which people hear fireworks going off during the year. And I thought, I guess people don't enjoy them as much as I do. And It's not been like, okay, 60-40, it's been like 100-0. And I don't know if that's, they talk about pets, they talk about, all sorts of things, right? Not just, any number of things.
Animals.
So I kind of backed down a little bit and said, well, there's apparently more of a consensus on that point than I really realized before. Others' thoughts, shrinking essentially.
Well, basically, we're lining up for the state.
Yep.
No persons within the township shall ignite, discharge, or use consumer fireworks as defined in the Michigan Fireworks Safety Act, MCL 28.45, etc., on any day other than the following days. I'm not ready to start adding more days if the state isn't adding more days.
Yeah, but before we're adding, we're restricting, essentially, right? This is what this is doing, yeah. So Becky thought, hey, can we add one in, but the whole thought in the totality is to say, let's rein it in.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is what the state is considering as the holidays.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, my birthday is Juneteenth, so if you guys want to light fireworks on my birthday, I'm more than happy for you, but...
I was just going to say my wife's birthday is so it's very... But, I mean, if you do look at the government website, michigan.gov, Juneteenth is a holiday listed.
Along with Christmas and...
Along with Christmas and everything else, yeah.
Washington.
It isn't listed. I pulled up the State Fireworks Safety Act just to make sure that they hadn't updated it to include Juneteenth since we started pulling, and it looks like their list matches ours. Which is fine. Like Jim said, this is something that we get a lot of feedback on, and I just am nervous that we're going to be positioning ourselves to get feedback that is racially motivated. And I just am trying to be sensitive.
I'd be surprised, but yeah.
Primarily, I'd be surprised because the state hasn't aligned that.
Right. Well, I think that's an easy way to respond to it.
And it's so new.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a new.
I think that it came up on our Facebook page. It's the only reason I felt like I needed to bring it up. It feels like I'm really lobbying for this. I'm not. I'm just trying to be sensitive and mindful, and it came up on our Facebook page right around 4th of July.
Is there anyone else who was like, wow, I like to let them off whenever? Am I the only one out here? All right. Well, unless there's further comment, I mean, it sounds like what might carry the day is just bringing it in line with Michigan Fireworks Safety Act. Clerk, would you like to call the roll?
Mr. Schwam?
Yes.
Steele?
Yes.
Clerk is a yes. Supervisor?
Yes.
Trigger?
Yes.
Mr. Belling?
Yes.
Mr. Graffman?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that passes. Item 12, sidewalk waiver request for 4th Avenue. Trust everybody has looked at that particular spot and that particular request. He came before us, a gentleman did, to the Utilities Committee recently and made his request or petition. So since I was there that evening, I'll go ahead and to approve of this waiver request for 4th Avenue. Support. Moved and supported. I don't know how many times I've said this, but I've been on the board a while, been on utilities in the past quite a bit. I know the thoughts and the comments that generally arise when we're receiving these waivers, and it's usually concern is sidewalk to nowhere, right? But then the common concern is, but if we don't have you installed, then are we ever going to make connectivity, right? So we've got those competing concerns, and the way generally the board, and that doesn't mean we have to here again, but generally has put it is to say this is in so many ways, a temporary waiver in the sense that we reserve the right, we have the authority to require of you to install this in the future should we be deciding, well, should we for whatever reason we think is in the best interest of the residents, but should we likely be deciding to put something along that corridor itself, the neighboring properties as well. And believe me, I'm not naive enough to think that people won't cry bloody murder when that happens, and some of whom you have to remind, and Rod used to keep a list, I assume he passed it on to Justin, of people we've granted exemptions or quote-unquote temporary waivers to sort of remind them, but the chances are by the time it comes up, that owner sold to another owner and he doesn't know anything about it, and then the other people, they never did request a waiver, so what are you doing making them install a sidewalk? It's just how it is. When it does reach critical mass, does the board have the will to impose sidewalks where they're beneficial? And I want to say in the past, the answer has been yes, although not pretty. There's been a willingness to do that, and for that reason, I think there's been a willingness to exempt when it doesn't otherwise make a ton of sense at that moment, you know? Because the next request we might get for someone on that street to put one in, or the next situation where someone's being required, maybe 10 years from now. Meanwhile, that sidewalk sits there and grows weeds and cracks and doesn't lead to anywhere, you know? I don't know, I said my piece, but that, I won't, none of this will be around forever, but I know in particular, I won't necessarily be around a long time. It's like, I would hope that boards would continue with that historical knowledge about what's been granted to whom and when, that when you start to look around, and it's usually utilities, I mean, those who are on utilities, who part of the initiative in that committee is sometimes looking for those spots. Sometimes residents point them out. Sometimes you notice them yourself, or you go, hey, we got a gap right there. Why aren't we filling it, you know? And we need to have the political will at that point to fill that gap and get it done, you know? So, other thoughts about this property, obviously, in particular, the one that's in front of us?
Jim, in this case, I agree with you, and they should be granted a waiver. But it's incredibly difficult for boards to step up in the future. And then it's very difficult. And so but in this case, and being part of the committee, yes, I think they should be granted a waiver.
Any other thoughts? All right, hearing none. Motion is before you. All in favor of granting this motion, this waiver request, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? And it is granted. Item 13, fire station drop boxes and cameras, part of the outgrowth of one of the proposals that was voted on last November. Is there a motion? This came out of utilities, by the way. Is there a motion to approve these installations of drop box and cameras?
So moved.
Support. All right. Comments, board questions?
Could Rob kind of explain it? Because it was, the public probably will not understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I'll get assistance from our elections director as well, if need be. So with the passing of Proposal 2, with 9-day early voting, and part of that is based on population size, we're required to add drop boxes. And Amber, correct me if I'm wrong. So this is part of that requirement. We felt it best, two good locations will be at Station 1 and 3, in the vestibule, secured, locked in the wall with security camera, so allow folks to drop off ballots to those secured locations. And so this is going to take a small amount of construction to install those drop boxes. We hope there'll be state reimbursement. Nothing's guaranteed. That's still in flux since this is so new. And we sent out requests to several folks for bids. We only got one, that was Lakewood. It's a small job. No one's really interested. So that is why we're doing this. Amber, anything to add?
Are required to have one drop box for every 15,000 registered voters. We have 41,000, which means we need 3, which is why we chose to separate it out into the fire stations. If we need to add another one later, we can use that other fire station. And they are open 24 hours a day, so people can get into those drop boxes.
And we do have one at the library here.
Correct.
That's our third one.
One right now, yep.
Is there state law that says it has to be built into the building? Can we just not do like a freestanding?
If you don't build it into the building, then you have to mount it to the cement so it's unmovable, and you still have to have the video camera up there. So, we could, but I don't know that would be any more cost efficient because I'd have to change the type of billet container you're using.
So we haven't got any quotes yet from Lakewood, the ballparks. rough estimate?
Oh, no, we have the one quote we're asking for approval on.
And we don't have any quotes for a freestanding box?
No, because you can't have a freestanding. We thought, let's put it into the wall if we're gonna go that far, so we can access it from behind the wall, lock and key. It just makes a lot of sense to do it that way, similar to what we have here.
Because I know in like Detroit, they have, it's like an old post office box that's just sitting on a street.
But it requires, the ones that they have that are like that are much larger than the ones that we'll be using, and they require a lot more installation costs. And we felt that it would be safer, more secure for the voter's ballot if the box itself were inside, and that we can't have tampering of the box itself.
And what's the ballpark for the freestanding?
I believe the one I looked at was about $3,600 to $4,000.
Well, he's thinking of the next question. Did I hear you say, and I hope it's true at least, if we're going to have to go through this, everywhere across Michigan where this is required, they require cameras as well, right?
So it's not just us. Yep, it's everybody.
It's anybody with 15,000 or more voters required to have one drop box available 24/7 for each 15,000. So if you have 15,001, you're required to have 2 drop boxes.
Well, it makes sense to have it at the fire station.
Right. They do have to be spread out evenly throughout the township.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's great problem solving for a problem that kind of fell in our laps, right? Like, gotta tackle it.
Well.
And more cost efficient too.
Yeah. By the problem, you mean the passage of proposal 2. I agree with you.
Exactly what I was talking about.
Any other comments or thoughts about that? No, hearing none. All in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's been passed then. Item 14, City of Hastings request to be removed from the Grand Valley Metro Council, which does require acknowledgement of other members on that council. So is there a motion to approve? Hang on here a second.
Move.
Is it just an acknowledgement? Is that all they want? Or and we don't have to approve of them, we have to acknowledge in some way by way of
A resolution
signature?
to approve amendment.
Resolution to approve, okay, all right. So to approve the resolution acknowledging as a fellow member of that council that City of Hastings be allowed to be released. That is the motion, I suppose, for a resolution. Is that a good way to put it?
Yep.
All right. So moved.
Yep. Support for it.
Support it, okay. I reached out a couple of times to the mayor out there. I want to know why. And left him voicemail, but never heard back.
I think Justin got a chance to speak too, but like they're such an outlier. They're in Berry County. Majority of them are Ottawa County, Kent County, where they do receive some type of benefit to it.
Yeah.
They're so far out with that.
Yeah.
They request to be out of it.
Yep. Okay. All right. Mentioning Justin, I want to say as an aside, I appreciate you've had some experience with the council. You're there now helping us, representing us, and apparently figuring out the point system. Almost like, how you get your search engine, your Google engine, and put you at the top of the search or something. You're getting us up where we belong. If this thing's going to exist and we're going to participate, then we want a benefit. And you're in there fighting for us. So there we go. Appreciate it. I don't know. Any thoughts? I guess we're going to get out one way or another. So it's a resolution.
Yep.
So I take it we've got to call roll.
Yep. Mr. Swam.
Yes.
Mr. Keel.
Sure, yes.
Clerk is yes. Supervisor.
Yes.
Treasurer.
Yes.
Mr. Valdez. Yes. Ms. Grafton.
Yes.
Okay. Item 15, pickleball update and presentation. I think before any sort of motion would be in order, we would look to receive the update and presentation that Mr. Howlett has for us this evening. So we welcome that at this time. Thank you.
To kind of set us up for Jeff's presentation, our last services committee meeting, we met at 8th Avenue Park on a very rainy morning, and And Jeff had been out there prior to the meeting putting stakes and spray paint out in the grass to help us like really kind of visualize what we were talking about. And so just to kind of give that frame of reference, I want to make sure that Jeff knows how much we appreciate his work to prepare for that services committee meeting, and to kind of stake it out. I'm a very visual person, and that was really helpful to me, but also for patiently putting up with us as we maybe stand out in the rain and answer all of our questions. So thanks, Jeff.
So just to bring us up to date, this board actually petitioned and approved me to do some feasibility studies. I'm not sure the date exactly, a couple months ago, kind of to identify first of all, the potential placement of pickleball courts. And so I took a drive around every that we had in Georgetown, and Rod and I investigated and looked at his knowledge of the soil of those areas, the amenities of those areas, kind of some past history he shared with me. I then began to go one by one, and if you kind of just slide down the bottom of this list just to show that we actually went to every park, and I made a list of the amenities, those things that could play a factor in pickleball or an installation of such, and we'll kind of go through those just briefly, just to give you an idea and bring you up to date of where we are from a couple services committees now past that. But you look at some of those items of tennis courts in the area, basketball, baseball, soccer, football, frisbee golf, pavilions, outbuildings, bathrooms, playgrounds, walking paths, if there's lake or water nearby, fishing, splash pads, lights, parking, and then kind of related to those items, how well they fit to the potential of a pickleball court in those areas. So one by one, we began to look at those items, the neighborhood, accessibility, the actual location, and kind of bring those to the forefront. A number of our locations, and kind of go back up, but from Rush Creek, I won't go through each of these, but this just brings you up to date that we went through all of this. I went through the service committee and proposed each one of these items. A number of these areas that we thought might have been kind of towards the top of the list are built on marl, and there's a major issue with removement of marl and trying to build on something that's not stable. It landed on it's actually 8th Avenue Park, and it landed there saying this is our optimal location, and the site committee basically agreed with that conclusion. But these are some of the benefits to that, or actually the items that were considered. It already has permanent bathrooms. There's a playground, an updated playground nearby. There's walking paths. There is water there. There's sufficient parking at this point in time. Accessibility is quite easily off Chicago Drive. It's quite a secluded area, and probably one of the most important things is that it is actually built on gravel and sand. So that was probably a major consideration is that we had good foundation for that type of installation. So this is where we at the site committee, they said, okay, let's look beyond that. What would that look like? How could we fit? How many courts could we fit there, and that type of thing. So we took the next step with their direction and their approval to say, okay, what would that look like? And I don't know if there's any questions to that part of it. I'll pause there just a minute. But
I mean, in terms of comparing the parks, are there any questions?
Yeah, the feasibility portion of that. And how
I don't need you to go through every single line of every one, but can you touch on, maybe you are touching on, maybe you plan to, but you kind of scroll fast through those different parks there. You obviously eliminated the others as being as good a choice.
Yep.
Were there particular reasons either that this stood out or that they fell short? You said Morrow, a couple of them.
Two of the I think one of the ones that I was looking at was Crestwood. We thought that was an ideal situation. There was a couple locations in Crestwood that we could actually build on. The removal of marl in the area that we first thought was optimal has been actually discussed in the future, or in the past actually, and movement of that material across the swampy area was a big issue, and nobody wants it. You can't get rid of it. There's some history in Hudsonville of one of the buildings that had to actually pile it all up because they couldn't get rid of it. And it's a big pile next to their new build off of Chicago Drive. And so that eliminated that location. But part of that was that they had no amenities such as pavilions and bathrooms, and playground was outdated, and all that type of stuff kind of said, okay, then that one's really not at the top either. Maplewood.
Did you say Crestwood?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Woodcrest.
Okay.
Woodcrest.
All right, I apologize. Woodcrest. Yep. The second one that kind of was looked at quite closely was Maplewood. There was a portion near the driveway going into Maplewood that we were looking at. It could potentially fit like 8 courts. Was not optimal to get any more than that. They have a water problem there already. We've had some photography done of water seepage coming up at night and settling back down. Also built on marl and some unstable ground. So it kind of eliminated that location and kind of really then, those are the only 2 that, for a lot of other reasons, kind of fell into place. They did have a splash pad, they did have some bathrooms, that type of thing. So it ended up kind of going to the 8th Avenue Park from that point. Those were our second and third choice.
I apologize to interrupt. Was this included in anything? Because I don't see it as something for their meeting. It wasn't in their meeting minutes or in their original, nor was it on this. Because I had not seen this. That's why I was just curious where this was ever.
Brian, would it be helpful if Jeff went through and like he did with us, each park?
Yeah, it'd be nice to review it. That's why
Personally, I'm not looking for a complete repeat performance, but I was asking him to kind of hit the, am I missing you? I mean, you agree?
No,
because I haven't seen either. I'm saying, kind of hit the high points, low points.
Exactly. I thought it would be Woodcrest. And it wasn't until you went through it with us in detail that it became obvious that 8th Avenue would probably be the best choice.
Correct.
I'd recommend that you take every park and hit it with us quick.
Okay.
And allow questions.
Let's see if we can go right down to the last couple there, and we'll just work our way through. Because I know this is a question I get. Is that the only location? You know, and why did we pick there? If you look at these, basically this is Rush Creek. They have 1 tennis court there, basketball in poor condition. They have some baseball, some soccer there. The playground needs updating. Sufficient parking and actually sufficient space in that area, but to get to it, probably the biggest thing that came up was they've already had some issues of that park and the comments of the neighborhoods around of people coming through there to their park. And to get to that park is very cumbersome to get through, whether you come from the east or the west. It's a lot of neighborhood to come through. It's not very easily accessible, and it kind of is pushing out there in that Hudsonville, Allendale area that is not central to what we felt was kind of important to be central to Jenison or Georgetown.
And our businesses.
Our businesses, absolutely. You know, as we've heard earlier, you know, we look at Grand Rapids and how pickleball, they gather together, they eat together. When events come in, they're actually using hotels in the area, that type of thing. So this kind of wasn't a central location. The second one here, Rosewood Park. This one was basically, they have permanent bathrooms, they have a nice updated playgrounds, walking paths, they have some Frisbee golf there. Sufficient parking at this point in time, which would kind of be tested depending on how many courts we get there, but we really couldn't put very many courts there, maybe 3 or 4 courts max. And there was a site plan in the past that looked at something there, and it wasn't sufficient space-wise for the quantity of courts that we were looking at. Pioneer Park. This is off 12th Avenue between Chicago Drive and Baldwin. Access was not too bad. They have a portage-on there, playground updated. They do have a pavilion. It's central to Georgetown from Baldwin or Chicago Drive. Large space south side on top of the baseball diamond, so it would be eliminating that field if they use it for football or wherever they do soccer or whatever. Easy access, but pretty close to neighborhood houses. Not very secluded, so it wasn't the top of our list. Woodcrest, we've talked a little bit about this. At first, we were looking next to the pond at Woodcrest, fairly secluded from nearby houses, 12th Avenue, for sure, and apartments on top of the hill. It would fit 12 courts, but on Marl, a major costly condition. A second area would be on the south end of that property where we own. It's on the other side of a wet area, and we looked at that. It's fairly low land, but it could be, drier than the other portion. But the main issue is poor soil in that area. Also, an issue would be the need for so many improvements and add-on of other amenities, pavilions and bathrooms and all that type of stuff. It doesn't have really any walking paths in there either. Maplewood. Maplewood dedicated and used regularly. Permanent bathrooms, playground, walking paths, sufficient parking. Fairly secluded from nearby houses. It's not really right across the street from houses. Potential south area. We measured the space, looked at the size of courts we could put there, potentially putting a slab over top of the tennis courts that are there. Probably one of the biggest hindrances is once again the poor soil, and also actually the fact of the matter of the water condition that we're having there right now. With the tennis courts and how it's affected those tennis courts quite negatively. And that led us to where we're at with 8th Avenue Park. It's a fairly well-used park. I visited that planting flags and seeing people walking dogs and enjoying the mornings on the pathways there. The bathrooms that are there, playground that's really nice and updated. Parking is sufficient, could be expanded fairly easily. The accessibility from Chicago Drive to 8th Avenue is only going by maybe 15 houses. It's across the lake from our senior center. It's got a great walk path around the entire lake there. It's quite secluded from nearby houses for sure. Large enough area for at least 12 courts, potentially more if we had a desire. There were a few trees that were my concern, always is in Grand Rapids. When we want to cut a limb, we have to go through a lot of hoops to do that. Some of the discussion of that is the actual make of those trees that we would be removing. When we get to the view, I'll show you actually only one set of courts actually invades the tree area. The rest of it's in a big open space. It seemed to be an ideal location with very good soil.
Thank you.
So that was, sorry to interrupt you really quick, Jeff, 2 services committee meetings ago. That was the presentation that Jeff gave to services. And then we kind of said, well, it looks like 8th Avenue is the place if we're going to do it. So why don't we dig in a little bit more to what it would look like at that location.
And that list was not posted in the minutes or on the agenda, to Ryan's question.
Okay.
No, it was not posted.
I don't see it either.
And it wasn't, we don't do bi-monthly communiques anymore either? Because I thought it'd come in that.
We got a paper copy of it, and it was a PowerPoint that was shared with us at the services committee meeting. I guess I never dug into the website to know whether it was there or not. I was just kind of trying to give a little bit of timeline narration of the work that Jeff has done for us since, besides services that you guys might not have been aware of, kind of how our flow with Jeff has gone. So we kind of gave him the direction to investigate the parks. He investigated the parks, and then 2 services committee meetings ago presented that document to us. Rob or Justin, can you guys get that document emailed out to us at your soonest convenience?
Certainly.
Do we have that as a PDF?
Yes.
I was unaware that it wasn't attached to minutes or anything like that online.
Jeff even looked at all the Ottawa County parks too. But we were looking at parks in Georgetown Township. So I think that's why we hired him to find out the best location that worked the best, which he said 8th Avenue.
I have to admit I was a little frustrated too that I've seen this picture on social media, but none of this is in the minutes for our meeting tonight. It wasn't in the services meeting minutes. So I see a picture over there on that easel, but that hasn't been distributed to anybody into the board. that's been able to look at it, to see what we're doing.
The only reason I knew even where we were at in the process was I saw a Georgetown Township post on Facebook. So then I was able to actually go there and see the layout and the flags and everything.
Michael came to the meeting and he got a copy of it.
Okay.
Who got a copy of it?
Michael, when he came to our services meeting.
Okay, but I did not.
No.
So it wasn't forwarded to me at any time, so that's my point. If you want me to come to a meeting and be informed, I kind of need to know what I'm voting on. That should be on the agenda. It should be forwarded to us. Whether it comes from the services committee or whoever puts the agenda together.
So Gary, I'll include all attachments. Now that did not come on the agenda because it came at the time of the services committee. So if there's any documents, I'll forward them to you going forward.
When we get email figured out, I think that's been a piece of it too, is the email's been such a mess, but.
I think I just got my account today.
Continue.
Okay. So, if you go back at least one slide, really, to look at the park itself, give people a little bit of an idea. Maybe not. So that's a look at the park just from overhead. That's from online actually, but you can see over to the far left, upper left, where the actual courts begin. You can see the three cabanas in a sense, or the shade structures. The top left one there is where the walkway would come into the park to lend to pickleball courts in that area. At first we did some battalions basically of 4 courts and 4 courts and another 4 courts and trying to get the layout. And we talk a lot about the idea that pickleball is such a social sport and the actual need for the social gathering area as we put courts together. And basically, one of my visits over the past couple months is the opening they did at Schmidt's Heritage Park in Grand Haven. And they have a layout of courts there, 12 courts, quite similar to what I proposed. And it kind of confirmed what I was looking at to say, if I broke them up in different pods, potentially there's a little bit of a cost increase because now we're not big slabs of post-tension concrete. We're actually individual slabs. But in doing that, it allows for general concrete work to be done in between all the courts. And when we went out there, they had their grand opening, I think it was 2 Wednesdays ago, probably 400 or 500 people there. I was amazed at the turnout, the support of what was going on, and that was the opening of their pickleball courts. And they did a wonderful job of presenting it and in launching it into the community for use, and the courts were totally filled with players playing on this for the first time. But the layout, if you go to the next picture, because of the north-south direction of courts, the need to be north-south, this was a layout that kind of lends itself to kind of what this park represents to me a little bit. People coming to the park, hanging out, walking the paths, walking through the courts potentially, maybe not even players, but a gathering area for people to be and to sit. I've kind of looked at the potential of not just having benches or bleachers for staging, but having some like flower pot areas that actually will be built up with an 18-inch shelf to sit on and share conversations with a friend or whatever you might do. So it'll allow us to have some natural seating that wouldn't be all just fixtures. And I think it lended to what this park seems to be. It has a great pavilion there, a huge pavilion. The bathrooms, like I said, are right there within walking space. We've kind of blended it into the actual walking paths that are there. And the furthest right set of courts, we actually opened up almost 20 or 30 feet to the right in a sense to give us that big common area there with possibly some shade sails over, that type of thing, giving a good area for whether we do some tournaments or some social gatherings, that type of stuff. I was in Lake Odessa this weekend. They had someone come in and actually rent the entire park for a birthday party, and they had all 8 courts used for a birthday party. whether, depending on how we would use the courts or actually give access to our, the community, I don't know, it could be very possible, especially when we've separated them out a little bit. A birthday party could be in the top two, and all the other stuff or public stuff could be going on elsewhere. So, this was, one of the layouts that we came up with. It kind of very quickly in my mind dissolved that battalion look, that real mechanical look. It left room for what I've seen at this park is actually the shoreline still being used, where we have all the cutouts basically. The shoreline still being used for people to set up a camp or to isolate their family down the shoreline. I've gone by there in the last month and seen that taking place, and it still lends itself for that to happen. So this is what I proposed and submitted, presented in front of the group at our visit on that Monday. Bless you.
So is that the end of your presentation? Just so I'm clear?
I think the next suggestion that came out of that meeting was that we go to the next step of potentially, I think where we stopped at your approval before was to getting some feasibility, getting some hard, true ideas of what the park would look like, and then to go to the next stage potentially of gathering some bids. And that's, I think, what came out of that site committee meeting. And I think that's where.
So when I see on the agenda tonight, third level of engagement for $2,600, it's referring to the activity of soliciting bids for what it is that you're proposing here.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Now we have a model, a scope of work that says it needs a little bit of refinement to talk about fence heights and that type of thing. But to answer even some of the questions I think, Gary, you had of the real monetary value of post-tension versus the other, we would get quotes from both ends of things and look at it that way. But now we have something to quote against and to. I have numbers from other projects, but why not do it on the one that we're actually working on to make sure that we're not.
I'll write a number down. We'll see how close you are when you get there.
Exactly.
But I'll be within 20 grand.
Exactly.
And I won't have to bid it.
Got it.
I mean, I guess that's a good question. What's your number? Because, I mean, right now, we are still kind of blindly going in this.
I'm not gonna go down that road.
I'm just saying, I don't, we're asking again another $2,600, and we don't even have a ballpark of what this is. Or at least I haven't been provided. I mean, are we talking $1 million? Are we talking 1.5? Are we talking 2?
If we built exactly what is on that picture with your best kind of gut of what current costs are for post-tension concrete for the courts, but more regular concrete for the community areas, can you give us a super ballpark number of what you think that project would probably cost?
I won't hold it against.
Yeah, exactly. And I've brought it up before in this committee.
Keeping in everything.
Absolutely. So when we talked before, and I think Gary raised his eyebrows when I mentioned the 60 grand per court. When we look at just the concrete costs, I've done some numbers based on whether it's a 2-court, 4-court. When we get into multiple courts, it actually comes down. But per court, just for the concrete itself, roughly is that anywhere from $17,000 to $30,000 just for the concrete per set of courts, okay, or actually per court, excuse me. So when we look at all the other amenities around it, the fencing, the painting, the nets and posts and all that type of thing, that 60 grand still is a pretty decent number. We have an installation of 6 courts going up right now in Richland, and it's $360,000 for a 6-court facility on just bare ground. They have to do exactly all the excavating, everything that we do, all the landscaping beyond that. Yeah, there's not much different. And I have a installation in Muskegon that's going in. I think that's it's a 4-court, it's $165,000, but they took on some of the excavating and all that stuff themselves. Okay.
Are we looking around $800,000?
At 12 courts, we're talking 60 grand a court.
Which is 70.
That's a good ballpark.
725.
The course itself and the fence around it.
And
including the
all the concrete in between it.
In between it? And landscaping and everything?
Yep. Now that, I mean, obviously we've extended that concrete slightly a bit, so I mean maybe there's a little bit more than that, but if you're talking 800 grand, that's probably a good ballpark to say, what does this look like?
And the layout that you're proposing, just for clarity's sake, because it came up with some public comments, this is not sitting on any of the beachfront. This is on on area that is currently wide open grass. You can see on the picture on the screen, I'm saying for my board members, friends who weren't at that meeting, you can see on the screen where the current path kind of curves into the right, right there. And so that would kind of get eliminated, and then in exchange for it, the current path would get extended. I was struck when we were walking through it with how nicely the current sidewalk, especially down towards the beach, how nicely the current sidewalk will kind of flow with what this picture is. But it isn't on the beachfront at all. It's mostly on wide open green spaces. And what did we count? About 8 trees that would probably be impacted?
Yeah, if you look at that farthest right corner, the only one that really actually eliminates trees. I think there might be a tree on that court right there that you're pointing to.
And it was a cottonwood,
One
right?
or two there.
Yeah, there was the couple that we were going to have to remove. The other township staff that was there kind of said those are very, very messy trees that cause us a lot of headaches. So as much as we appreciate the old growth, we're not going to cut into most of the old growth forest that's there, just a couple of messy cottonwoods.
Yeah.
Was there taking up all the flags shortly thereafter. There were a lot of down limbs right over those 2 courts, and I took some pictures of that. I mean, some fairly good sized limbs that are all falling. And I imagine, as I think Rod mentioned, we're cleaning that up continually. So.
One of the things. Go ahead.
The 2,600 would be for you to get us quotes to give us some firm numbers, and how long would that take you?
Right now, that's a good question. I think I'd like to do a pretty thorough job of that. But as you know, contractors are extremely busy right now.
Sure.
So getting them to respond, one of the fence directors that I talked to in Granville, he says we're about 3 to 4 weeks just to turn around quotes right now. So it just gives us an idea. It's probably a 2-month process to gather something completely together. Maybe I can't say it would happen in a month. I'd like to, but I think you're probably talking a month and a half to get all that together. Enough that says this is that ballpark number that we're looking at, and it's got good enough cross-representation of 3 to 4 different companies that on each of those items.
Sure.
I think would be a good thing to do, and I think it's due diligence to go to that level and to make sure that, hey, this is not just blowing smoke. And one of the things that we talk about is timing. Right now, people I know are going into projects like this, and I've been speaking in front of people like this saying, we'd still like to get this done this year. Well, it's not happening. It won't happen this year. It's not intended to happen this year. We were, as the board even mentioned, taking it slow and doing due diligence to actually gather this information now. Even if we were to say in October to say, we like the numbers, we want to go with this, that right there is probably the latest you'd want to get it in the spring. It's probably anywhere beyond that. You're probably talking, the fall of next year, almost even before this is something completed.
So timing to me is not an issue right now. It's not going to be done until next year. You're moving along. Timing wise, even your fee, your personal fee, which you proposed before, that's not a stumbling block. I think the overall cost of the project, of course, which is part of what you're needing to assess and present us with, is a big matter, a big issue. And while I would have liked to have had, that's why I was asking you to go back through, because I hadn't seen before, the various comparisons among the park, which is sort of the big first hurdle for the full board here, as we're already kind of talking about the next. You went over enough of that with me, and I know these parks well enough to say, if I were choosing a location for all of them, this one does seem to make the most sense. And I will say, as somebody who's really wanted this for years, is we have no visibility at what might potentially be our prettiest park in the entire township. People don't know it exists. People will know it exists. They'll know the senior center exists as a result. I mean, there's a lot of added benefit to the location that you're choosing. But to me, it was not so much, ultimately, if you're going to locate them in one spot, I'm in agreement personally as one of 7 votes on the location. What I didn't understand, and maybe what you can educate me and perhaps others about, is why is it important to the pickleball crowd to have it all centrally located? In other words, the other option I thought you might come back with would be to say, hey, here's 2 good parks. I put, this at, Maplewood and this at 8th Avenue or something. or I'd put fewer, than 12. I'd put, 8 there and I'd put 2 at Maplewood. Or tell me why you are lodged on this idea and why maybe those who play a lot of pickleball would say, oh, no, you want them like this.
Absolutely.
What's the?
I think even just to answer that question, why this wasn't maybe brought back at this first step of the feasibility portion of which one we would actually recommend. If there was 2 or 3 that were fairly optimal, I think this would have come back as, hey, this is what we received and there's 2 or 3 places. We don't want to spend a lot of time on 2 different places or 3 different places and extra money in doing that. I think it would have been presented. As we saw it, there really wasn't more than one choice. Partially because of that idea of pickleball is an area when I think one of the gentlemen mentioned, when you want to come and play pickleball, it's not like gathering 4 of your friends and saying, hey, I think those courts will be open in Granville. Granville has 2 courts right now. We're breaking ground soon to be expanding to 6. They're doing that because coming to 2 courts is really only there just for those near neighbors because they can actually drive by quickly and see it's open. Hey, let's go play. No one's driving from anywhere else or a distance in Granville or from nearby Jenison to go to those courts typically because it's going to be full. And they're going to go there, waste the time to drive there. Then where are they going to go next, or what are they going to do next? And when you put in a facility for pickleball, the bare minimum you'd ever want to do is 8. We've done some studies and looked at those courts that are 6 courts, and there's issues with them because people are still going to them and they're too full. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, people aren't coming to those. And so when you get to 8 courts, it's almost enough that you could come and actually blend in somewhere. It's like I said, you're not gathering your group. You're meeting some people there potentially, but you might go there as an individual and throw your paddle in a rack and actually join a game of pickleball. Downtown in Grand Rapids, I have some people that are actually trying to learn the game, some 20s and 30s that are learning the game just because they want a place to go and meet people socially. Some of our healthcare workers, this is a comment that I'm getting continually. I don't want to go to the bar and meet people. I want to go someplace that's healthy, that's outdoors. And if you could go down there and see what's taking place, of 21 courts, that's 84 people playing pickleball and at least 60 or 80 people sitting around socializing on a Wednesday night, Thursday night, up till 11 o'clock at night. And it's like, I don't know anywhere or any other type of venue that sets out there that's being healthy for our young adults. And I think that's what we heard a little bit of.
So how did you arrive at 12 then? If 8 is sort of critical mass, how do you get to 12? Well,
12 is using the example that we have in Hudsonville. We look at there's 12 courts in Hudsonville. The new facility at Schmidt Heritage Park was a 12-court facility as well. So what I did is actually I started with.
I'm sorry, Schmidt Heritage Park. What?
Heritage Park. It's off of
Grand Haven.
Okay, all right.
In Grand Haven. So that's a 12-court facility. Byron Center is 12 courts.
Yeah.
A lot of the courts, the newer courts that are going up are at least 12 courts. So what I did is I actually laid it out saying, how many could I fit there? And I began to drop them in pods of 2. And how do they fit? And what does that formulate as an overall facility? And actually I laid in 3 more courts off in the distance, just as a future expansion if we wanted to. Does it lend itself to the potential of that? When we looked at that, I said, well, without invading that area of trees, exceptionally, let's start here, and this is where, this is how I came up to 12.
Okay. A couple additional thoughts. And this is an aside, I suppose, and to say that those on services, I might say, no matter what we do here, I might still want to see at Maplewood Park either a conversion of one of those tennis courts or something added there to offer pickleball in a way that, as you say, the groups aren't going to come. They'll get used locally by people who live nearby, and we kind of want some of that as well, because what I don't fully understand, again, is somebody who's pro pickleball, if you will, but doesn't really play, but has for a number of years thought, yeah, I think it's an addition that's missing here. I'm just understanding the scale. You're trying to explain the scale to me, and also those that play. It almost sounds like groups are descending to the big parks for particular days of the week. Like, okay, every Tuesday morning, everybody goes to Georgetown, and then Wednesday afternoon they're at Hudsonville, and then so it becomes I want it to be it's a community thing. I want it to be very much a community thing. It's not a niche with I trust with like the avid players where you go, okay, they're coming every week, twice a week, and I bet, 10% of them are from Georgetown and 90% are from elsewhere. Is it potentially as high as that? And you can say, well, you can justify that to say, well, they're bringing their business, they're having lunch afterward, you're filling up their cars with gas, other reasons. I'm not saying it's bad. In fact, that park in particular, I think it's used probably by majority, I could be wrong, but majority non-resident, it is what it is. People know there's a beautiful park, when they find it, they go there. But is this something that when you reach this level here, you are drawing the better crowds of pickleballers who really love the game and who will travel and make it a group activity on a regular basis? Are they a composite of all of the, from here to the lakeshore? Or are we probably getting, of those that would come to a park like this in a setup like this, are we getting half, you think, Georgetown residents among them? What do you think?
I think I would almost look at what the makeup of Hudsonville would be. And when I go to Hudsonville, they have a structured idea of when, like 8 to 12 in the morning or 9 to 12 in the morning, is basically club play. So they're club members, they're community members. 5 or 6 days a week, they're full every morning. They'll create a ladies league, or they'll create, so I sense that a lot of those are actually, members of the community.
Yeah.
Versus
we don't know that. In other words, you're not quite sure.
No.
We're more than 3 times the size of Hudsonville. We're more than twice the size of Grand Haven. We're bigger than Byron Center. And you're saying all those have 12. I would suppose Hudsonville isn't filling up all 12 by Hudsonville residents. There's probably a good proportion of people that.
I think a bunch of those people are Georgetown.
They're Georgetown Township residents.
Yeah.
Don't have any.
But I guess that leads me to my one struggle with this is you just said a majority of the people are club members. This is a public property. They're paying their dues to you, to your club. I mean, I guess my concern is the club itself profits out of this. You get more members. You could potentially have.
Well, I think
you could have potentially. So that's my concern. Where it's like, if it's such a big thing, private party, you could easily buy land and build whatever you wanted on there and make money on the deal. So that's one of my big concerns. Where it's like, you want membership in your club. You stated that a lot of the members would be club members. You could potentially do lessons. You could potentially do that stuff with it as well. That's a concern for me.
Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but the club formed because Hudsonville was asking the pickleball players to help fund repairs on the court.
We're not asking that.
I know, but that is why, at least that was my understanding from talking to some friends who play in this club that plays in Hudsonville, is Hudsonville was essentially saying, you can use our property that's on a school district land, but you got to help us maintain it. And so they formed a club where they were all pitching in so that when the bill came due for the repairs, there was an organization that had money to pay that bill. But there hasn't been because we're not asking, we're talking about post-tension concrete that's going to hold up real nice. And not something that's on asphalt that's going to need constant repairs. We've never talked about, not that we can't, but we haven't talked about the community, the pickleball playing community having to foot part of the bill here. So you're thinking, do you think that this club that I know that a lot of you guys are members of that are helping to financially support the Hudsonville courts, do you foresee that club relocating to Georgetown, or do you foresee the Georgetown residents that are in that club kind of saying, well, we have courts in our own community now, and so now we'll play here and you guys will continue to exist there? Like, what's the dynamic? I know we don't have a crystal ball to know for sure, but kind of what would your gut say is probably going to be the dynamic?
I think you see a combination of things, because I think right now we have more members playing at the only real local courts that we have in Hudsonville than it can handle. My son was going to be here tonight. He sent me a picture of probably 30, 40 people just sitting and waiting to get on courts to play on those 12 courts. And so when we all of a sudden see that, it is a question, and we've seen it in different communities, of where do people go, what do they do now, and how does that play out? Nobody forms a club in a community without having courts. okay? But once courts are there, the club, what it lends to is actually helping to put formats to play and that type of thing. They go through almost $400 or $500 balls a year. The club pays for all those balls. It supplies those balls. There's certain things like that take place, and that's the community of a club. It's not a lot of money. It's like $20, $30 usually for any club. And I belong to Lakeshore and Spring Lake and Lake Odessa and Grand Rapids. I belong to those clubs. I want to support them. And basically those clubs are what maintain it. They keep it clean. They do a lot of that type of stuff. Even in Grand Rapids, I mean, we do the fence repairs when it happens. You know, that's a 60-year-old park.
And Jeff, if you go out to the store and buy a can of 3 pickleballs, how much does that cost? $10?
Well, they're $3 a ball.
Yeah.
I mean, if we buy them in bulk, you can get them for $1.50 to $2 a ball, but that's an expense. That's something that.
So they provide them all.
Like in Hudsonville, just an example. I mean, they're putting $10,000 to $12,000 of repair in theirs a year. That comes up from their funds of the club, which doesn't cover it. They actually have to fundraise to even get more of that. So
I think
we won't have that in the park, but there's certain things like that.
Is the club basically volunteers?
It's all volunteers.
Okay, so Kendall had mentioned about personal gain. Is there anyone making money on this? I honestly, I don't see how.
I don't mean to be rude, but there's not. No.
Is there?
You're all volunteering your time. I had.
Point of order. Point of order.
So, question, did you finish your statement or no? I want to.
No. I previously, when we were first exploring this, a comment was made that the club had raised quite a bit of money. It was into the tens of thousands that they donated to keep things going. Am I right in that?
You're talking about the Grand Rapids Pickleball Club. They oversee 21 courts. They're having a 900 entry professional tournament that's coming up, and basically all of that money that they're a 501(c), and they actually, all that money goes back into the enhancement committee to improve the courts, putting up new sheds for storage, putting up cement walkways. They have extended all of those funds, all go right back into the city property.
Where I see a sticking point that's going to hurt here is that it's going to be perceived that this is being done for you and the club and not for the taxpayers here of Georgetown Township. When we talked one-on-one before, our comments were made that we welcome everyone, we train people, and we make sure the courts are available. But we structure it, and normally we cut down on vandalism dramatically because it's organized.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if the club has organized games, like let's say that we built this, and on Wednesday night the club has organized games from 6 to 9, and I don't know that because I'm not in the club. And I've never played pickleball before, but here the community that I pay taxes to just built these courts. And so me and my husband say, I wonder what pickleball is. Let's go see if we can find somebody to teach us to play. And we just randomly show up on a night that the club has organized play at these taxpayer-funded courts. What does that sort of, what does that discourse look like? What does that... if the club is playing on all 12 courts and my husband and I show up as non-club members but to a public park, are we going to be able to play?
That's my question.
Absolutely.
I show up and there's you and your kids and you just want to play and be like, I'm sorry, not tonight, you know.
Good question.
Our club events, or any club events, I don't care which part you go to, are all open formats in a sense, where basically it's just giving an idea that these courts here might be for this level or that level or beginners or advanced, that type of thing, but also that they would have a format of how to get onto those courts. And if you're running courts properly and you have some direction of a club that has some knowledge in this, that you will set up different formats of play where a group of 4 people could come in and actually go onto those courts and actually be 4 on and 4 off. A person coming by themselves or with their mom or their kid could come over to a court and actually put their paddles in and actually 2 on when a game is won and over. And it sets up a format of rotation and an invitation, actually. Even Hudsonville, they've been doing community ed stuff at the park, you know, at the courts and stuff like that. So it's definitely inviting to any level of play, and it is not a closed format on any night.
Will people be turned away
No, in my opinion, not at all. No. I mean, overseeing the club play at 21 courts, there may be some conflict of who's playing on what courts, but no one's turned away.
And that was on my mind as well. Like, I envisioned originally several years ago, and saying, hey, we need some pickleball. I don't traffic in that circles. I don't know 12 courts. I'm thinking, let's put a couple here, and let's put a couple over there. You'll have some fun or whatever in the community. And then to hear this, like, okay, that's the world of pickleball. And I'm not saying I don't agree, that that's not a good idea. I love community. I love the fact that park getting some more attention. But I'm old enough to remember playing racquetball. And I remember playing tournaments. I remember that made it on TV. And then you had teams in college. And you had it on ESPN. And you had Rackets West and Racketville. And, and all those buildings got torn down, And how confident are we? I mean, tennis courts endured, albeit people play less than they used to. But they have endured. Baseball diamonds endure. Basketball courts endure. What makes you think pickleball will be more akin to one of those versus, say, a racquetball mad?
I just think the studies that we've been seeing, I mean, from whether it's the industry of the American Sports Builders Association and the numbers that they're running, what they anticipate the number of players to be, 5-10 years from now, it's astronomical. And what we're finding is actually, we talk about how busy the contractors are right now with those numbers of how many courts are being built across the country, even internationally. It is astonishing, basically, to a level I don't think we've seen. When you look at racquetball courts, we had Rackets West and, out in Plainfield or whatever, but they were typically a 4 or 6 court facility. They were not as large as what we're seeing at all in this situation. And they weren't a sport that you could just come in and play, that you could just come in and put a paddle on a rack anywhere. They kind of closed in on themselves because they're a lot like playing a round of golf. 4 people going and playing a round of golf, or 4 people trying to get a tennis match together. And that model just doesn't expand on itself. It doesn't promote itself for more and more and more growth. I think that's a big difference in this sport. It is welcoming to, at Hudsonville, I've come to Hudsonville and seen a family of grandkids to parents to grandparents all on the same court, and even on a club night, and they are not kicked off a court because it's not fitting into the model.
Do you think that the enthusiasm around an avid group, a percentage of which are Georgetown residents and perhaps others not, would bring the kind of vibrancy that would draw in others within the township who don't currently play or don't play much, who would want to say, man, I've heard about, I want to go down to, where's that park anyways? Oh, I found that park. That's a really nice park, by the way. We played a little pickleball, and we're going to go back there next time and use the beach or something, or walk around the lake. Do you think it's got that kind of pull?
Yes, I do.
From the ones who are really active in it?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I mean, I can't tell you how many. Only a couple years ago, I could go to the courts and actually know almost everyone on the court. I go to the courts now, 21 courts, 84 people. I hardly know any of them unless I engage with them and begin to introduce myself to them, because it's like it is growing so fast and drawing in, especially that younger generation of 30, 20, 25 to 35, 40-year-olds that are looking for a place to connect and really to build some synergy over a sport, an event, something healthy. It's phenomenal. I mean, it's really actually, it's hard to fathom what it's doing in that arena. As well, I mean, we have a Legends group that meets. These are our 70 and 80-year-olds. They meet and they play on a Tuesday morning. It's amazing that they have 8 courts of players, all that age, playing amongst themselves. These are some of the guys and women that founded, and kind of planted the seeds for us to be where we are today. And that was only 10 years ago.
So I guess I got some questions.
Yeah, I do. Go ahead.
How many, are there going to be tournaments there?
I don't necessarily know that. Let me step back. We have tournaments at Belknap. We established a tournament mindset about 5 years ago. We held one of the first volunteer-run professional tournament, having some of the top professionals that you see actually making lots of money right now, being paid wages to play pickleball. They have continued that, but I get requests every, 3 or 4 a week of people putting up courts saying, some of them, I would say I haven't had one in about 6 months, but some of them saying, we want to build courts for tournaments. Well, that's really kind of come and gone. That tournament idea of building courts for tournaments is really gone by the wayside. We have 21 courts, but they're requesting to hold a big tournament or any tournaments like that. They may have, they request a minimum of 24 pickleball courts. Well, even that facility is stretching right now to contain that. Now, club tournaments or actually local tournaments, anyone likes a little bit of so I can see that happening. Yeah, we have a tournament that it's a mixer tournament or a couples tournament, whatever. We could have tournaments like that. I think it'd be a great thing to enhance the play there. It would have enough potential and enough courts there to actually hold one without too much problem.
So there's probably not an opportunity if a tournament's going on for a normal person to stroll in and jump in a tournament.
No, that would be something that we would have to deal with in a sense of this tournament would be when we hold a tournament at Grand Rapids, we actually go to the event committee and the Grand Rapids board and actually ask them and the Parks and Rec, and they say that's open date. We will definitely grant you that reservation of that property to hold that event.
Is there entry fees in tournaments? Or is it free?
No, tournaments anywhere from $25 to maybe $50 for an entry fee. Pro tournaments
who would get that money? Because if this is
whoever's running that tournament,
100% of the township taxpayers' money, I would assume that 100% of all entry fees goes to the township.
It would have to cover the fees. So if you wanted to say the profits went there, what we do in Belknap and what we do basically at Hudsonville, those fees go into the club to put back into the courts, and whether it's for upkeep or whatever it is.
And I think there's going to be a number of issues. One, and I'm not exactly, when do our parks close? Is it at dusk?
10 o'clock, one of the two.
They have to install lights then, right?
The parks close, so there's no light, so we don't.
This time. Dusk. Okay.
And I think parking is definitely going to be an issue. I think it was even brought up at the service meeting at 8th Avenue. There was discussion that parking is not going to be adequate. There was discussion of deleting the beach altogether. And I think that's something we should consider. If that's going to delete the beach, that's going to be an issue with the residents.
Rod Deemter had said that beach is a lot of upkeep and a lot of expense.
But that was not a proposal to eliminate the beach.
That's never been part of a plan that services or anybody has said.
No. Right.
So it was discussed at services.
No, it was mentioned by a member of the township staff that they don't love that there's a beach at that park because we have struggled with water quality there, and because we've had some drownings there, and because it's a lot of work for upkeep. But that was a passing comment made by a staff member that wasn't part of any plan or direction that we have given Jeff or that Jeff has given us.
Right.
I think the point is
delete's not an option. It is going to be an issue because we charge non-residents, and it's not per carload, it's per person. That's $5 for non-residents. So I could see that being an issue too, is kind of prohibitive of people going there.
Isn't that something we can look at down the road or revisit down the road if we had to?
Well, I wouldn't want to invest in a 12-court pickleball complex, or as some board members call it, a palace, if it's just not going to get the draw, because that's the same issue we had when we lined the current basketball court for pickleball. Is just nobody used it. Because a lot of people didn't want to pay the entry fee to get into the park to use it. I think it's going to really drastically change the dynamic of that park, because it is a nice, like others have stated, it's a secluded, tranquil area with a beautiful path around it. I think I like activity, but I think, for those laying on the beach relaxing, to have the courts that close to them could be a little bit annoying. I could definitely see that being an issue. Parking, and then I know it was mentioned at services, and I don't know who it was that mentioned it, but talking about food trucks, more space for food trucks to come in.
It was brought up in a situation of a tournament, or even like I know right now, I keep bringing up Belknap because they're kind of setting the way, but on a Wednesday night, they bring in a couple food trucks, or they bring in a food truck, and they make it kind of more of a social gathering. There's people coming there just to have food and sit around and actually socialize.
Which I think sounds like fun and everything, but I know one of the selling points that got this ball rolling was this is good for local business. And the restaurants are going to see an increase. Well, if we have a food truck, we don't have any food truck vendors in Georgetown, so this would actually be a benefit to whoever has food trucks in a different city,
kind of
prohibiting them from coming to our own restaurants.
Kind of ironic that we're on a day that we have food trucks in the park.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly. I know if they were here, and I knew they were here, I'd have been there before I came here. But
I think it's a pretty broad statement to say we don't have any food truck vendors that live in our township.
Food trucks, they are not a farmer's market. And I get labeled, as like, he hates pickleball. I don't hate pickleball. I play tennis. I like tennis. I would rather play tennis than pickleball. But I mean, there's no saying that I won't pick it up in 20, 30 years. I'll give it a shot. I guess when I envision it, I originally thought, we talked about this in services 5 years ago, 6 years ago, not a complex or a palace, but rather 2 courts here, 2 courts there. That way it's convenient to make. And I've talked to some people that play, and they're like, I live on this side of Georgetown. I got to drive to 8th Avenue Park. So it's all on the other side. And now it's not that far. It's 6 miles, but 6 miles where if I'm always kind of take it slow, see how it goes before. I mean, I don't want an ice arena 2.0. I mean, we had people pedaling door to door with little kids dressed up in hockey uniforms trying to sell this. It's going to pay for itself. We lost millions. Millions. We lost millions. So that's why nice and slow. Try 2 courts at 8th Avenue, 2 courts at Maplewood. See how it goes. And then if it goes good, then 2 courts at Rush Creek. I think that's a beautiful park. There's a pavilion there. And then goes good. Let's do 2 at Pioneer Park. So that would spread out. It serves, the local neighborhoods. I love that idea.
What are we going to do with all that ground cover?
Slow and easy, and we currently have. Don't we have tennis courts at Rush Creek currently?
There's one.
Yep. So there's tennis courts there. So that's another one of my points is we can't even maintain what we currently own, and we're thinking about adding more stuff. Every one of those lists was dilapidated. So, but let's not repair the basketball courts and the tennis courts. Let's just build new pickleball courts, which just seems crazy to the average taxpayer that I talk to. They like pickleball too, but they're not on board with the complex concept. Just because of the impact on that parking is going to be an issue. That's going to be increased money and cost there. Tree removal, I believe it was like 20 trees. A beautiful walnut that was, I don't know, probably 150, 200 years old.
We stood on the right-hand side of them, and it was 8 trees.
Yes, 8 trees, not 20.
And that was after I flagged it off to where they were at. So, yeah. And I don't recall a walnut in that area at all.
Is there a way to make pickleball courts be multi-purpose? Like, I understand it's a different texture and everything, but could they be a multi-purpose, have it as a basketball court as well, or a tennis court or anything like that? I mean, I'll be honest, I thought there would be more than, I didn't see the survey prior, but like I thought there would be the idea of maybe one big idea, as well as, hey, if we just wanted to do, I think you had on your list 6 to 8 courts at Maplewood. I see soil was a concern, but did we do a soil test just to verify that? And then Rosewood had a possibility of 3 or 4. I think you had Rush Creek 2 to 4, but see, Rush Creek could be, if it's dilapidated tennis court, why don't we just rip it out and put pickleball? So I guess I thought there was an option of like, hey, if we, kind of like what he was just saying, if you want to throw 2 or 3 here, 2 or 4 here, versus having one big complex. Did we look at having that as an opportunity, like just completely revamping?
Well, I think that comes from my background in research and what actually is really appealing to pickleballers. It's just 2 or 4 courts, very minimal use. When Granville's probably the best example. They have 2 courts and you can have 8 people on them. people come in and drive, they go around the loop, and if they're full, they go somewhere else. They go downtown. They go someplace that they can actually know they can get on and get a game. Typically, that's, a 2-court facility is not gonna be sustainable. It's not gonna be beneficial to the park.
Jeff, if this was approved, it would be at the discretion of a future board as to whether or not it'd be completely open to the public all the time, whether or not there'd be a club that might have some guidance or restrictions. That would be at a future board's discretion.
Yep.
The fact that you already have a structure and it's worked well in other communities, I think is excellent. And chances are we'll probably shift that way, but that would be a future board that would be deciding that. And it may be that they want to just completely open to whoever wants to go down there. We don't know. We'll have to see. But for $2,600, you will pursue this, and in a month or two, you'll come back with some numbers for us. And I think that's what we're voting on today, is to pursue this, and let's see what he has to say. And for $2,600 to do this kind of work, and you work for a group of volunteers. This is not a structured group that's going to make money off of this. So this is not personal gain. I think that's very important for people to understand.
I think $2,600
Beside the structure.
or how much would it be to explore, and this is $2,600 to explore one option. Right. How much more to explore a couple options? I mean, to be presented as a board with other options?
In other words, could you both solicit bids on what you presented tonight, and secondary or along with that say, and if you wanted to also add something to the existing Maplewood Park, like add 1 or 2 courts here, or add 1 there and add 1 to Rush Creek, I'm almost thinking both and,
It says 6 to 8 on his thing.
No, I know, but I'm saying if you're going to do potentially a big one and you're soliciting bids for what that would look like, that would give us a ballpark, I suppose, as to whether we're there or broken up into 2 parks. But what would it cost secondarily that if you said, well, you might do the complex, but you might also do one over here in Maplewood where local people can just go over and hit. And as you say, it probably won't be a popular spot, but it'll be popular enough for the local residents. Maybe we want to see all of those options and might approve more than one potentially.
Can you expand that for $2,600, or would you have to up your fee?
It would definitely have to up the fee in a sense, because we have to actually step back into level 2 to do a scope of work for each one of those locations. And I think that's where we kind of went to the point of saying, okay, where can we narrow this down to actually focus our attention for the $4,000 that we came up with, or I think the first 2 were 24 and 26, I think, or 24 and 16. It's basically defining a scope of work is really what those contractors are looking for, to tell me what's the fence height, what's the, what is the size, what are we doing, and actually going through that entire scenario for each one of those locations. I don't have a number right on the top of my head, but it would be somewhere in that range to do each one of them.
Does that include the noise reducing, acoustic noise reduction treatment?
It does not. There is some available for basically for fencing and that type of stuff if it becomes or it is an issue, or whether we want to go through and do a study or something of that nature, but there's none of that included.
Well, and I think the main thing too is I don't even know if we need him to do that, because I guess, we know the average, and this is his particular business and contractors he works with, at $60,000 per court. So if we want to put 2 at Maplewood, it's $120, and we want to do 2 at 8, we're $120. And I think that, and that's what I'd like to see, is those options and considered, rather than just 3 people picking one and saying, all right, everybody, I hope you're on board. And with that, is there multiple, and forgive my ignorance on pickleball, multiple associations in there, or is there West Michigan Pickleball Association, that's it? Is there like Grand Rapids Pickleball Association?
There's different clubs. There's a Rockford Club, there's a Grand Rapids Club, there's a Hudsonville Club, there's Lakeshore.
And are any board members of any pickleball organizations, clubs?
Yep. I've played pickleball literally once in my life at a staff PD, and I was terrible at it.
You're not a card-carrying member.
There's a lot of players on the court set.
I was one that they laughed at. I was really bad. But it was fun. Like, it made me want to maybe go play sometime, but...
Okay, I got a few questions. I'd like you guys to talk. My turn. So, the Hudsonville Pickleball Club, that on Hudsonville Public School property?
It is.
Have you ever approached Georgetown Public School about having them build pickleball courts for you?
No.
You know, they do get 78% of our property taxes. Just to let you know, we get 8%. So you're coming for an $800,000 outlay from the people that get the least amount of property tax. Just so everybody's reminded of that.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear that this is not my agenda. This is not my ploy. I came to you saying, if you're doing it, I want to be a part of it. I want to offer my assistance and my expertise in that. So,
but I'm addressing everybody to tell you where the money comes at property tax time. All right? We all got our tax bill this week. I get lots of them. I also noticed that in your assessment, I don't know if you ever did this, but there's enough parking down there. I sit on the planning commission. That's always the biggest conversation we have. You put up a building, you got to have so many spots per square footage, or what the business may entail. And when I listen to you talk and all the people that are going to be down there, 12 courts, 4 people, 48 people, spinning out, they all drive themselves, there's 48 cars, and then the other 48 come into play. We got 96 cars, there's not 96 spots down there. So that's a question I have, because I did not see anything in your assessment about, there's parking, but it's sufficient parking.
Right.
That's the difference. So,
that is the next step that was brought up. That's why I think, Michael, that was the fact that parking facility on 8th Avenue Park is not real efficient. It's got a lot of excess there, and it could be more efficient to be laid out and that type of thing, to see how many parking spots we have to do that evaluation. I think it's an important step.
Right. But I would have thought that had been in this evaluation already, because that is part of the evaluation of putting pickleball courts. Is there enough parking? That's part of the whole evaluation of whether or not you can get pickleball courts. So, my other question was what Mike talked about too. We do charge non-residents to use our parks because we've had some issues in the past. That's why they had to do that. I also seen the question mark on lights. I understand how people are. They're going to play, and it's like, well, we don't have no lights. We need lights. So that'll be the next thing that will come. Guaranteed.
I know Hudsonville doesn't have lights, and they play till dusk.
Do they? Okay.
And it's not an issue. I mean, that's not a real big issue. There's very few parks around that do have lights.
Okay, that's good.
So
that's good.
I think even Granville, when they chose to do that, they said absolutely no lights.
Okay.
They have lights to shut down and put equipment away or whatever, but there's no lights allowed there, so it's acceptable.
Okay, that's fair. So that's kind of my question. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm never gonna play pickleball. I'm not.
Come on, Gary.
All the sports that I'm involved in cost me money. So I went boating 3 times last week. Cost me to put my boat in the launch. That's putting transportation. If I want to fish, I got to buy a fishing license. I like to shoot. If I came with a whole group and say we're going to start a shooting club, can we put a sporting clay shooting range on one of our township parks? Everybody like, you lost your mind? Well, if I bring enough people, if I bring 40, 50 people here and they all like to do that, we should just do it, because we got all these people here. They all want pickleball. And I like to shoot. I shoot. And by the way, I got to buy shells. They're more expensive than those balls, trust me. It's quite a bit more money than those balls you buy. So you have to understand where I'm coming from. Every sport I've ever been involved in has always cost me my own money. Taxpayer dollars are never involved. Even when the taxpayers put in the boat launch, they still may charge you $10 to put my boat in. So that's a concern I have. I also have a concern about, you talk about the club and whether or not there's an issue with a club in a township. Right now your club is with Hudsonville Public School. That's a different entity than a township. They're allowed to do things that we can't. They can rent their gym out for yoga or whatever they want to do. We can do that, but we got to be a little careful about the separation. So I'm not sure how that's going to look yet.
Yeah.
Or if it, I'm not saying, I'm not totally against it, but I'm not 100% yet either, just because I look at the cost. I think your $800,000 is low.
I think it's actually high. So I've done some other bids recently, and they've actually been below that. So it's one of those things.
Haven't got the parking included yet, though. And that's where the money's going to come.
Potentially, right? Absolutely. Yeah, and that will be included. To look at does it have enough, and I think we'll.
So those are my concerns. I have concerns, just because of the nature of spending public money on a sport that nobody seems to put in their backyard. I have a lot of friends who are like, hey, I like to swim. I'm going to put a pool in. I've only seen one my neighbor has a pickleball court in his backyard.
Voted 2 this week to align new pickleball courts in the backyards, one in Zealand.
Yeah, but I'm like, if you want to swim, you put a pool in. If you want to do things in your backyard, you put a basketball court back there. But no, everybody comes over and plays pickleball. For some reason, they always want the government involved in helping them with a sport they like to play. And nobody helps me with my sports. So I'm that's why my struggle is like, really?
Not fair, right?
Well, our parks master plan that we're working on too, and
does it have a pool? I like to swim. Do we have a pool in the March Center? Golf course in there? Golf course?
So I think Gary makes a great point, and that was on my list too. Was I don't believe we can rent out or allow access to a for-profit entity on a government facility. I know, for example, our library, you can't hold a seminar in their for-profit seminar or sales meeting. You also can't tutor and charge people, although people do that, which is in violation of our own ordinance. And also you can't do campaign political stuff in there too, which is both a violation of the township ordinance and the Michigan campaign finance issue. So I think that's something we can check into, because I don't even know if we should be discussing it if it is in fact a law that prohibits profit on government property. Schools are different, but I just don't know.
Yes, and this is a not-for-profit entity, right?
Well, so is Blue Cross and Blue Shield and Salvation Army, but...
So Jeff is a local resident that will look into this for us and has been for $2,600. He'll take us to the next step and give us numbers. And then we'd know, now we may at that time go, I don't feel comfortable with this at 8th Avenue. I think we should be looking at other parks. Then we might want to have him again look at those other parks, but it seems like soil is the big problem.
So let me ask you this then, John. There's money here, this $2,600. Could it be approved to have him do this without it being interpreted both here and throughout the public that a decision has been made? In other words, it'd be one thing to say, well, that's a modest number to look into, and we ought to obviously proceed with caution. Are we going to have a problem if you say, okay, we want to go a different direction? You just wasted $2,600. Well, I guess you did or you didn't. You got information you didn't have, and it helped you make a decision, I suppose, to go a different direction or not,
There's been such a call for this over the years, that to have a local expert that's gone this far, to not spend this $2,600, I think that's where a lot of people would go, what are you thinking here?
So my point, though, John, to you is, I could potentially be a fourth vote here for having this additional study. And I'm open to that, so long as that's not interpreted as it's done. We're doing it. I mean, it is in fact the next exploratory step to say, hey, what does that cost? And now we've got hard numbers, and we've also maybe in the meantime had more time to think about. Okay, we kind of know what it would cost to put one here or one there. What are we thinking? I'm okay with. Because it's a modest number, so long as it's not blown out of proportion or misconstrued as the board has decided we're building exactly what has been presented. It's like, no, the board is looking further into this, getting more detail and cost to decide ultimately, is this something they're going to do or some modification of it or something entirely different, right?
I would agree with that.
I could go with that.
I'm very comfortable with this motion to continue to contract with Jeff and have been trying to speak to the conversations that Jeff has had with services. But I'm not committed, I am not committed to any sort of, for sure this is happening, this is a hill I'm gonna die on. Not at all. Because I think that what the dollars and cents are gonna turn out to be is a huge consideration. But unless we extend our level of engagement with Jeff to start to collect that data, we won't know. And so I think, to your point, Jim, that's an awesome differentiation for us to make as we're voting on that motion. The voting on the motion is to continue to work with Jeff, but it isn't any sort of commitment to building any sort of plan yet. We got to get money. We have to get the information first.
And we're not in saying get this additional information. we're not at the same time foreclosing other possibilities based on the information we do receive and further discussion that's had. Because I think a number of us have raised concerns and questions that show that we're having to get educated and having to think through what is best. So I personally, I think we have probably talked about this as much as we should tonight in this meeting, although you can obviously keep going if you like.
I just want to state one thing.
Yeah.
I mean, he said there's an outcry for it. And in that survey of 2,700 people, only 17 mentioned. The number one outcry was tax cut. And I remember that came on the board here, and it got shot down. So that was the number one outcry from the community. And we did not do anything about it. So I guess my ultimate concern was, okay, we already didn't do what was number one. Now we're going to this never even made it as a goal setter. I mean, for the longest time. So it's just crazy how fast this has gone. I mean, that's a little bewildering to me, how fast this process has gone when there were so many other goals that we wanted to accomplish prior to that.
That didn't even get met.
That didn't even get touched.
Or even discussed.
Yeah.
It just jumped to the front of the line. And I think that's a big issue is we had 2,700 respondents. The vast majority
How long ago was
said,
that survey?
in 22, I sent you the link. Did you read the survey?
Yes.
Excellent. The number one request was reduce the spending, lower the taxes. And pickleball did, because I did a search. How many times does pickleball come up? 17 times. I got nothing against pickleball, but out of 2,700 respondents, only coming up 17 times is not
Was there a
vast majority.
specific line? Because I don't remember if it asked, do you want pickleball or do you want tennis court? Were those specific lines, or you were just
It was what would you like for park improvements?
Okay.
So it was open to anything.
So level 2, you go there, it says 3D CAD layouts. I haven't seen those. I'm assuming they're someplace. I also see the files to give contractors a clearly defined scope of work. And I haven't seen that yet either. So I'm very curious about a scope of work because that's my business.
Absolutely.
So I look at it and I go, okay, so what's your scope of work? Because, number one, a 3D CAD layout would show me heights, where everything's going to be. Everybody can look at that picture. I want to know how high the thing's going to be from the lake. I'm looking at the topo of the whole thing. What's it going to look like? How's it going to fit in? And the scope of work is concerning just because of the fact I want to know exactly we got everything covered. That we don't even surprise us if that's what we're going to do. So I would like to see whatever we got on that, just because, again, that's the reason why I'm a little disappointed this wasn't in the agenda, because I don't have to put you on the spot. I could look that over and be able to not have to ask those questions. So if it's in the agenda, then I might be able to look that stuff up and say, yeah, okay, I can see where this looks decent. So, yeah. I mean, I'm of the mind, only because I hate to make, this is my wheelhouse. I'm in construction. So I do a lot of this stuff. But I don't want everybody to take my word for it, because I don't think that's fair for me to come in and try to give ballpark numbers on things that, I bid buildings, but I don't bid sports complexes. I'm of the mind that for $2,600, I'll let you be the fall guy.
Exactly.
It's $2,600, but we've gone this far. I want to see where you come with your numbers. I'd like to see a scope of work and see where you're going to go. But I also agree kind of with Jim and Mike where better to just have it all in one park. We should be looking at some pickleball courts at some other areas. And I know that's not your social thing, but it is pickleball. So if you want to play pickleball, you're making it available to other parts of the township. So.
And that's why I'm hesitant on the 2,600. The number's not scary. It's just, I think we're too far ahead. I think we need to back it up, because if level two is gonna say, here's the other option. Well, I don't wanna spend $2,600 on the 8th Avenue option, and then another $2,600 on the Maplewood, and then another $2,600 on Rush Creek. I mean, I would rather we kind of all get an agreement on what is pickleball going to be, where is it going to be, before we start spending money on one that might not even be the choice. I just think it's too early. And Gary brought up some great points. Is I didn't get any 3D CADs. No, only because I was at the meeting did I get to see what it was going to be and where it was going to be located. And then I guess my other question too, and this is common, we do it all the time. So library was built, AE Progressive was the architect, Lakewood Construction built it, MC Smith, I believe he did some landscaping for it. It's common practice to get a percentage of the total project cost. Does your company do the same thing? Total project cost, or just strictly the upfront?
Strictly my fees.
Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that because you got to make money, but
Engaging with an engineering firm or that type of thing.
Okay.
So you work with those firms, and obviously those things would be quoted or costed out if we felt we wanted to go to that level, but no.
And then with those, will you look at like post-tension concrete? I know there's driveway concrete. Well, there's two kinds of concrete. Concrete that's cracked and concrete that's gonna crack. That's just the way it is.
Jeff already looked at a lot of the areas of where the soil was good.
But will you bid out to say 4 or 5 different concrete companies?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
I think you're underselling your services, quite honestly, your fees. I think because you want this, and that's a good thing. In other words, you have a passion for it, and your fees are minimal. And to Michael's point, I mean,
absolutely.
Although to differentiate, I would spend the level 3 money approval tonight as well as a comparable amount of money to look elsewhere, because it's still cheap to have better knowledge and full knowledge of what could be done in several locations. But that's not all before us tonight. All we have before us is level 3, and I think maybe it's time to call for the vote on that. Without, of course, putting words in anybody's mouth, we've all got certain opinions we're reserving yet and have stated. So please don't hear public what we're not saying. And I guess board members, we try not to miss message either, which is we do ourselves a favor and adequately explain to anyone who might ask, which is we're exploring still, and we're not committing. And there may be other things we explore besides this, but
I do respect your passion and your time, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, well said. So, motion's before you. Doesn't require a resolution. So all in favor of the motion to have Jeff level 3, and to the extent, Jeff, you've heard comments about level 2 that we haven't seen X or Y, that you could help facilitate making sure the board members receive that. That's an aside, but the level 3 motion, all in favor.
Hold on 1 second. I think that we have to make the motion and support it. I don't think
that's right. I said at the beginning we didn't want to make it yet.
Do a roll call, or do you want to do a
roll call? And we'll also need the motion before us. So
I'll make the motion to approve the contract with Jeff Howlett for the 3rd level of engagement for $2,600 as recommended by services.
And I will support it.
Okay. Now call the roll.
Mr. Gaffney?
Yes.
Mr. Velding?
Yes.
Treasurer?
No.
Supervisor?
Yes.
Clerk is a no. Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Schwam?
Yes. Okay, that motion is passed. Second public comment period. As I alluded to earlier in the meeting, another opportunity to come forward, speak to the board. You have up to 3 minutes. It could be about the discussion we had. It could be about something entirely different. So, we're now opening that second public comment period.
Hidden Ridge Drive. I just want to answer a couple of your things you brought up about the Hudsonville Pickleball Club. I am the treasurer. It is a nonprofit group. Everything we make, we put back into those courts. The school does not pay for anything. The school doesn't pay for the porta-john in the parking lot. The school doesn't pay for killing the weeds. The school doesn't pay for the fences, anything. We actually buy almost 2,000 pickleballs a year. So that's where it goes. I just wanted to clear that up. There's some thought that someone's making money here, and when we have a tournament, it goes right back into paying for $10,000 worth of crackers here every year. So if anybody has any questions on how that works, I would suggest that if you do build these courts, there is some kind of organization to open play certain times of the day, because otherwise you're going to have some kind of free flow. It doesn't have to be a for pay piece, but you do want some kind of organization. Zeeland has an organization, and it's run by their township. They've hired somebody to run it for them. It just makes playing smoother, and it makes people come at the same time so they can play with each other.
How many does Zeeland have, by the way? How many courts?
Zeeland has a patchwork of courts, and
Okay.
I can't answer the number they have. Yeah.
But all in one place, or?
No, they're spread
Okay.
around.
They do the multiple thing then? Okay.
They do the multiple thing, and they hired
Okay.
2 people to run that for
Sorry,
them.
didn't mean to interrupt.
Now, I just want anybody have any questions for how, profit-wise, how it works, how we run it?
Thank you. In fairness, and I probably broke my own rule, but this is probably time for you to speak and others from public, and you're here obviously afterwards, so anybody with questions should see
Perfect.
you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
J. Parnell McCarter, Linwood, and Jennison. Board members, I read to you now excerpts from an email I sent you along with some additional comments and some deletions. As you know, the Ottawa County Board recently passed a resolution declaring Ottawa County a constitutional county. GT trustee Becky Steele spoke in the comment section before the board vote explaining her objections, whereas I expressed my support of the resolution and urged the board to go yet further in the Christian anti-federalist direction. Trustee Steele and others have voiced the case for federalist secular humanism against a quintessentially anti-federalist constitutional county resolution that has been adopted by the Ottawa County Board. The Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, the congressionally authorized Protestant Bible of the U.S. by legal act, the Northwest Ordinance, Christian state constitutions, and much more mark the USA in its original design as an anti-federalist biblical Christian nation of confederated sovereign states by constitution law. Pitted against this political theology since the nation's founding has been the political theology of federalist secular humanism. Federalists could not legally overturn the founding biblical Christian order, so they did it by illegal usurpation, setting up the federal constitution in its place and progressively implementing their agenda over the years. But even in their illegality, they had to concede some ground to the anti-federalists, which they did in the form of the Bill of Rights, as the first 10 amendments to the federal constitution. In so doing, they created a house divided. Nevertheless, liberals have progressively encroached upon the anti-federalist portion. With that background, I have 3 requests of this board. Number 1, please pass a resolution in support of the Ottawa County Board's constitutional county resolution. It is important that this township officially go on record as supporting the direction of the county board on this matter. Number 2, please read Dr. Murray Rothbard's book, Conceived in Liberty, Volume 5, in which he cogently refutes the Federalist version of history, showing how the Federalists were able to execute, and I'm quoting, a truly amazing political coup d'etat which illegally liquidated the Articles of Confederation and replaced it with the federal Constitution. In short, they were able to destroy the original individualist and decentralized program of the American Revolution. The Federalists, by use of propaganda, chicanery, fraud, malapportionment of delegates, blackmail threats of secession, and even coercive laws, had managed to sustain enough delegates to defy the wishes of the majority of the American people and create a new constitution. Legally and morally, the Christian Articles of Confederation are indeed the rightful national constitution of the U.S. I would encourage Trustee Steele to take me up on my challenge for a formal public debate in a public venue so that others can hear our debate. Given how the state of Michigan is now at the forefront.
Mr. McCarter, how much longer do you have? I think I heard the...
I'm sorry, I did not hear it.
Very light, yeah, it's very light.
Okay, I'm sorry, I did not hear it.
You just want to put summation on it?
30 seconds?
You want to put a summation on it? Sure, go ahead.
Sure, okay, thank you. Given how the state of Michigan is at the forefront of dismantling biblical Christian ethics in the state, it is important that local governments like this one speak up on the matter at this time. It's especially important. So I would request you do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Others of you? Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Kendall Gravel, 3256 Box Elder. Thank you for taking the time to discuss pickleball tonight. I'm not anti-pickleball, I'm anti-grift. Mr. Schwalm, you had mentioned my name when talking about personal gain. Personal gain is clearly happening because somebody who wants to see pickleball is collecting a fee for pickleball and continuing with engagements with pickleball. Not why I'm up here, though. Board members, Mr. Veldink, you're correct that the details were lacking with this. On 7-3, I emailed Mr. Blishock. I'm a bit concerned with the details, or the lack of details of the meetings from the services meetings dated 6/26/23 and most services meetings in general. With regards to pickleball update, the entry says discussion took place. Jeff gave final recommendation and update. The meeting minutes should have included the synopsis of the discussion and what the recommendation was, or at least a way for residents to find what was determined in the services committee. So when we have a public debate like this, Mr. Veldink was not caught off guard, Mr. Bosch was not caught off guard. I went on to say I spent most of the day trying to research what the township goals are with the pickleball court via past minutes, and each reference is vague and continues to point to the township contracting with an individual rather than the actual details. Thank you.
Address, Chandler Drive. I just want to say that our pickleball club, I am a member of the Hudsonville Pickleball Club. There are about 260 paying club members. But I also run the Hudsonville Pickleball Facebook page. I'm an administrator there. And we have 1,300 members of the community that are part of our Facebook page. Those, I would say the majority of the people that play at our courts here in Hudsonville now are probably 30% club players, and the rest are community players. And to answer your question, if you just came down on any day that we were playing, you would be very welcomed to come, and you would be rotated in. That's the beauty of having a club run a set of courts, because otherwise you're going to come down there with your kids or whatever, and you're going to take a court, and you're going to play for like 3 hours because it's so much fun. And while people are waiting to play because you're using, a court. So what the club tries to encourage is, even playing time for everybody. So you play your game, you're done, you go off, the next 4 come in, they play their game, they get off, the next 4 come in. So it's not a monopoly of any one family or one group of people. And to the fact that you say you will never play pickleball, or unless you're 20 years older. We have short people play, tall people play, fat people play, skinny people play. I mean, you don't have to be physically fit to play this, and that's why.
If you don't have a hand that won't pronate, you can't play.
What?
If you don't have a hand that won't pronate, you can't play.
Well, no, you'll be amazed. We had a guy play with no hand.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. Anyway, I also wanted to say that I forgot what I wanted to say. Oh, hey, did you pay for the fishing launch to be put in?
Yep.
You did?
Yep, my tax DNR dollars.
Okay, your tax dollars did, yeah.
Yep.
And then people who play softball at the softball fields, did they pay for the softball field to be put in? Personally?
Tax dollars did.
Yeah, same thing. Pickleball is taxpayers' money also. That's all I'm saying. Everything costs somebody, not directly. So if you say, well, no, I'm not going to go there. Anyway, that's all.
Thank you, Amy.
I would say, if I want a softball team, I pay a fee. Me and my other teammates pay a fee to play that. If I want to rent a basketball court, I pay a fee to rent that basketball court. They're not going to rent.
In Maplewood Park, there's basketball courts there.
Yeah, in the middle of the winter. I'm just, yeah.
Okay, so Kelly, Torrey Drive. I was just going to say, there's different areas in the community, they all run the courts differently. So we've heard about Grand Rapids. The city of Grand Rapids partners with the club so that they work together to run the courts. The city provides some money for improvements, but the club also reinvests all the money they make into the courts. There's Holland and Zealand. They actually are doing a lot of things through community ed, and the money goes back to the township directly, not to any club. And then they've hired people to work with the township to run those groups. I believe Byron Center Township just put in courts. I don't know that anyone's running those courts. So just no one is. And then they just decided, these are open times. And again, it's just somewhat community involvement, but no, clubs running it. No one's in charge besides the township. So I just wanted to point out, I feel like it's not a for-profit thing. I pay for the supplies to play my game, but the courts are usually provided for free. And it, blinking, it's in Hudsonville City at the school courts. The only reason the club has raised money and raised funds and actually amassed a lot of funds is because they've been paying for the facilities. I would be perfectly fine to not have a club and just play at the places. No one needs to collect money. I'll pay for my own balls. I'll pay for my own stuff and come. If I invite friends that are outside of the Georgetown Township and they have to pay the $5 to go to 8th Avenue, that's their decision. So again, the money would be theoretically if you have outside township people coming to the courts. It's your choice if you want to collect that money yourself directly. The club doesn't need to be involved in anyway. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Oski at 3540 Baldwin Street, okay? Where I live, probably within a mile and a half or 2 miles, there's probably a dozen churches. I'm wondering how many of them churches have some kind of a, supervised area in their church that they can play. They have basketball or whatever else for their church members. Now, I belong to the Holy Redeemer. They've got a big basketball thing there, and they play pickleball there. We have pickleball there all the time. Now, Ken that just left, he's one of our parishioners, but so, and I don't know if you schedule it or not, but the people who want to play pickleball, now in all this talk that you talk about, are the size of the pickleball deal the same as for tennis? They're different size?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so when you make these, then you have to figure out if there's going to do anything for tennis.
Mm-hmm.
Different size things. So that's something to look at. All the churches, whatever, if they've got some kind of an auditorium or whatever, it's got big enough, how many of them people play pickleball in their church? Something to find out.
Okay.
Barb Young, same address. I've only been a member for 2 years, so my understanding when we became members of Hudsonville was that because it is the Hudsonville Public Schools, that there's an agreement with the Hudsonville Pickleball Club, and it's for a certain number of years, and that understanding is such that if they need to expand that school, those courts are gone. And so a significant number, I don't know the percentages, I don't know, most people that I'll play with at Hudsonville are from Georgetown Township. In the minute, if those courts would go away, then there's no courts anywhere to play around here. And so it's just something, if that still is the case, we don't know where Hudsonville Public Schools is adding a lot of schools and doing a lot of additions. And so if that is still the case on the table, that's something to take into consideration, that those 12 courts would be gone, and then where would we be at?
Thank you, Barb.
Norman Wright, 8920 Victor Avenue. I'd like to talk about a couple things that were mentioned. I'm not in the best shape a person can be. Back to you, I used to play a lot of tennis. I used to play tennis every day. Love tennis. Was watching Wimbledon today. I can't play tennis now. That's not your problem. But I'm not the only person in this condition. I can play pickleball. I can play pickleball better than most people. It's really fun to have something still athletic, competitive, that a person 70 years old and that weighs more than they should. Believe me, it's a lot of fun. The issue with splitting them up, I think the people that have not played pickleball do not understand the draw of the social aspect of this game. I have been into many areas where I don't know one soul. Walked onto the pickleball court and met 25 people within an hour. I can have conversations with, go out, have a bite to eat afterwards. You don't find that in any other activity. I don't care what it is. Tennis, compared to tennis, it's almost antisocial. I gotta have my group. I only play with my group. Here, I can play with anybody and everybody. Women, men, young, old, doesn't matter. So you have the sphere of people you meet that's all across the board. It's truly a melting pot. It doesn't matter what profession, what education. It's a fun activity, and the bigger center will have 3 times to play easily. Absolutely no doubt about it. You put a couple up, yeah, people will show up, but you won't have 25 people there because they got to wait too long. So it's not going to happen. So to me, yeah, you could spend that money. Just wouldn't be well spent. Thank you.
You think you could beat Ryan? Could you beat Ryan, do you think? Anybody else? Okay. Oh.
Hello, Mason Klein, 2622 Willowview Drive. Thanks for your time. A couple things I just wanted to point out that someone mentioned earlier here, that there's 41,000 people in Georgetown Township.
41,000 registered voters, 54,000 people. Yep.
Okay, all right, it's even more. There's not a single dedicated pickleball court in the township. Hudsonville, which is significantly smaller than us, has the 12 courts. Byron Center just had 12 courts. As we heard, Granville just got 12 courts. So for any township member wants to go play, they cannot play pickleball specific in their township. They have to go to Hudsonville. You know, I frequently, when I play pickleball, like some people I mentioned before, it's very social. I like to go out for lunch afterwards with friends, sometimes people that I meet. But a couple of things I did want to point out that was mentioned earlier, that it's a fad like Pepsi. I just read an article in the Lansing State Journal that said it's the fastest growing sport in the United States. Approximately now 36 million people play pickleball. The amount of people that play basketball is 27 million. The amount of people that play tennis is 23 million. And the amount of people in the United States in 2022 that played baseball was 15 million people. So you take that number, it's the fastest growing sport currently in the United States. And we have 0 courts in the township permanently dedicated to play pickleball. The other point that I wanted to make, someone else mentioned you can play in churches. I also am a member at Holy Redeemer. They do have indoor courts, but like the other people mentioned earlier, people want to play pickleball outside. They want to be outside. You can't, in churches there's 2 to 3 courts at the most, and it's hard to get on. I've been at the church where I couldn't get on for an hour to play, and they only allow 2 hours of open play, so you can't play at all. Let's see. And also I think, if there are people from outside the township that come to play at 8th Avenue Park, it's just going to generate more revenue for the township and the park. I mean, if they get 100 to 200 people throughout the day that are not members of the township that pay, that's significant more money for the township to generate for income. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Jeff Howlett, 8270 Birchwood Avenue. Just want to kind of clear up that mentality a little bit of someone who hasn't played the game, of how more courts lend to a faster turnaround and more opportunity to play. When you go to a court that has, let's say 2 courts, and you have 8 people on the court, if 8 more people show up, basically a game is 15 to 20 minutes, could last a half hour. We play to 11, win by 2. Those other 8 people are sitting around for a half hour to get onto a court, okay? So when they finally get onto the court, the people that were on there will now sit there and wait for the next 15 minutes to play, and then that second group of 4 will go on, basically turning over. When you go to a set of courts with 12 courts, or even 6 or 8, you have a faster turnaround because all those games don't end at the same time. So you may only sit around for 5 or 10 minutes at the most, and now you get to go out and play. And while you're playing then, those people are sitting off and actually socializing for 4 or 5, 10 minutes and get onto a court. And they turn over so much differently and faster. And that's the value of having a lot of courts in a sense that turnover could be every 2 to 4 minutes sometimes. And that's the value then of me taking off my time. I'm not going home to my kids, but I'm going to the pickleball courts, let's say, before I go home at 6 or 7 o'clock at night. But I actually get some value out of that time, and I'm not sitting around just kind of sitting idle at a set of courts of 2 or 4. And I think that sheds a little bit of light on how more courts enhances the ability to play and get on and use the time that you're taking away from maybe your family or even your job sometimes to take time out to play and get some exercise and be social. The second part of it is I understand that we as a community are debt-free. As Georgetown Township, we don't have debt. We have a lot of money sitting in the bank. And from a different perspective than I was up here presenting, it bothers me that we're hoarding our money, whether we cut taxes or not. What are we doing to actually put back into our community? And I feel passionate about this just as much that I think it's time that we do something of that nature that puts something back into our community that is spending our money and at least going to the level of looking into how we're spending our money and doing due diligence and finding out, is this a value that's there? And maybe a new survey sent out with this idea that we're thinking of pickleball. How many people are in support? I don't understand, the idea that we're sitting on money. We're still collecting taxes. We haven't stopped collecting taxes, and we sit on money. And I understand it's a substantial amount of money. And I think it's time, whether it's pickleball or something else, we need to actually be doing our job as a board, and I commission you guys to consider that, to how are we going to spend our money to put back into our community and let our taxpayers benefit from it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. May I chime in just for a moment?
Sure.
We have done substantial things as far as goals for roads, sidewalks. I mean, we put a substantial amount of money compared to previous times into roads because we feel like that's a valuable thing. We also are staring at the face of a $15 million water project down 48th coming up here too. So there are certain things that we as a board have considered over the past few years that we have put a lot of money substantially into.
Okay, Dave and Randwick, 7047 Bliss Court. And you got some big decisions in front of you. And I think that's what I see a little bit of struggle with. But believe it or not, you're not the first group to go on a decision like this. There's been many boards, many communities that have had to make that decision and decide what to do. I just played in Spring Lake last week. They have 8 courts there. There's Mulligan's Hollow and Grand Haven. They got a lot of courts. Some new ones opened up, of course, on the south side of Grand Haven that someone mentioned. So we're not the first ones. I think, in part of a decision, maybe talk to some of those people. Are they glad they did it? Did it work out well for them? Did it not work out well for them? As you see, it's the fastest growing sport, so obviously there has to be some kind of synergy, some kind of dynamics there. Look into that. Take a look at what other communities have done. Has it worked out well? Has it been good for their citizens, good for their tax base? You can learn a lot from experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll close that second public comment period at this point and go to item number 17, discussion and general information. Is there any board member that wishes to bring up an item of discussion and general information at this time?
Yeah, I was just curious if all these people show up in the city of Hudsonville and ask them when they're going to fix the road to Baghdad, which is 32nd Avenue that runs in front of the high school, because every time I drive down that road, I'm like, you guys can have a pickleball court, but I'm sick of having my teeth knocked out every time I drive down that road. So I'm just curious if all you would show up in Hudsonville and say, hey man, can we get some roads fixed, like 40th Avenue by the fairgrounds and 32nd Avenue?
Because here's the deal, you can talk about Georgetown, we're fixing roads, that's where our money's going. That's where our money's going, fixing roads.
$3.5 million a year.
Yeah, we did $4 million this year, $4 million last year. So, you know, you have to understand, there's a lot of things going behind the scenes. I've said to the board before, everybody wants to put their name on a library or a sign or a clock tower or a pickleball court. I put my name on a poop station because when it backs up in your basement, you will know my name. You'll say, well, why didn't we fix that? And those are the things, the infrastructure, the Georgetown Township, we spend a lot of money on. We've got a lot of money coming up. Those are the things that nobody sees that's underground. That's not pretty, but we've done a pretty good job of that. So I get everybody wants these things, and it's all great. And like I've always said, if you really want something bad, you can always push for a bond. You can try to sell that, which is $1 million, and go from there.
Do it.
You could have a really nice facility. You could do whatever you want. So I'm just making the comment because I was down the road to Baghdad this afternoon. I was like, holy smokes, they got great pickleball courts, but their roads suck.
Thank you, Jerry. As only you could put it.
I have something to say.
Anyone else? Yes.
Some of you know that I taught a craft class at the end of June at our lovely senior center. And I have to tell you about the lady Marilyn Van Velzen came up to me after and said her husband died 5 years ago, and a lady from Cook Funeral Home, who apparently helped with the services, said, you know what, you need to come to the senior center on Monday morning to a pancake breakfast. She's like, I've never been to the senior center. That doesn't sound like anything I want to do. She said, I'll expect you there Monday morning. So Marilyn went. She said, our senior center saved her life. She said she goes all the time. She was so happy to do my craft. She can't wait for the next one. And I'm sure that's just one story. But I just wanted to, kind of commend everybody on how nice our senior center is. And if you don't know about it, you've never been to it. And if we did get pickleball courts, I think that it would also enhance our senior center. So that's all I wanted to say. And I'm teaching another class next month.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I did want to say, I drove past the cemetery today and the grass looked phenomenal.
Thanks for that comment.
And that's just it. I know I took some heat on that. How dare you criticize? Well, guess what? That was the most important day of the year to have it looking good. And I drove by today, and last week didn't look good. But today looked beautiful. I'm like, and that's what it's supposed to look like. So whoever stepped up and did whatever it took, it looks phenomenal. So kudos to them. Also, as far as GT does have 12 pickleball courts already, and it is a private business who invested a significant amount of money for these 12 pickleball courts. And I think part of the reason too is I'm not a big fan of all 12 is because what a slap in the face. A guy spends millions to build an indoor pickleball court, and then just months later, I think it was literally days before his grand opening, services said, let's do pickleball. Welcome to Georgetown. We're open for business. We're going to compete with you with taxpayer money. Oh, and by the way, get ready for your summer tax bill, which will be coming in July. If I was a business owner, I would not be happy. Would not be happy one bit. So, that's okay. Yeah. Anyway, that's, so I guess my main thing is, I guess I need to get on services and maybe Ryan, you golf?
I do.
All right, we get on services, we got majority, and we can steam train through golf course, municipal golf course. I can pack this place with 1,000 people every meeting. And that's just it, we need to think about the whole community, and not just our own personal benefit or benefit of our friends. I've said a number of times on the boards, we are representatives, and what that means is we represent our constituents. It's not what we want. It's not what a family member wants or a friend. It's what our constituents want. So I just wanted to make that clear. Just reinstate it once again, and people see what's going on.
To be fair, my comment tonight would be, I guess in response to yours, Mike, would be that I know each of you personally, and I know each of you has a passion for this township, and you take your position seriously. And I also realize I've been doing this long enough to know that even taking things very seriously, you can come sometimes to different conclusions. And I don't assume, and I won't presume that any one of you is ultimately going to vote on this or any other issue as a matter of personal preference or a personal, I don't know, pet project, but rather I hope that we always do, and I trust that you do always make your decisions based on what you think is best for the township. My other comment would be, as we went through that list there that Jeff had compiled, I hope services took note of that, and when you get your list of it, that you'll take note of that to say we ought not see that this tennis court and that basketball court and so on are in deteriorated condition. We've got the money to keep those up, and I'm not pointing fingers, I'm just saying that's where that ought to lodge itself and work itself up through. We can walk and chew gum, we can decide whether we do pickleball and also maintain what we currently possess. So
I think they were just fixing up the tennis court.
Okay.
Or ordered a new net.
Good.
Because I saw a couple of bills that Michael had paid on fixing up the tennis court.
Good. Okay. Ryan?
I mean, when I first got elected, I mentioned the fact that that fence, the backstop at Pioneer Park is a walking tetanus. I mean, it is so deteriorated. I mean, it's all rusted out and it needs to be fixed. But I guess my main thing I want to resurface would be I was not here the previous meeting. I was helping my son's team win a championship, and I'm
Congrats.
glad I did not pass up that because I promised the boys that I would be there if we got there. But I want to resurface a discussion that occurred, and if it wasn't for me watching the video, I would have never seen it. In discussion and general information, it states discussion took place. I also want to bring up the fact that in services now, there was something that was very important that we weren't provided and we didn't have. It was not in the minutes or anything like that. It was brought up I think it's a month ago now, the previous meeting, that a potential policy to make it where none of the other board members can attend a committee meeting with the fear of a quorum. I want to touch base a little bit on how the county works, and they have 9 out of 11 or 10 out of 11 already on each committee. So they have a quorum there no matter what. So just because somebody shows up and is doing their due diligence, I wish I could attend more of the meetings because I actually like it hearing directly from what's going on. Like services, I would like to know what the conversation was instead of just very vague minutes that you can't find it. I think if we're going to even talk about a potential policy to not allow another board member to attend a committee meeting in fear of a quorum or in fear of, I'm not sure exactly what the fear is. Transparency or anybody knowing what's going on. I think if that is a potential policy that is addressed, and it was on recording, and I haven't seen it, the finance committee meeting coming up next week, if that's going to be addressed. But I guess my concern is then we need to do a better job of our meeting minutes, and it's going to have to be more word for word, or we do need to record a lot of these committee meetings. I think if we recorded them, we would have had no issues with the services. We would know the discussions. I personally love that. I attended multiple planning commission meetings knowing that something potentially could come down the chute. I attended it purely because I wanted to hear the conversation. I wanted to see what the process, how they worked through it. So I guess that is a big, I was watching that and I honestly became very disheartened, disappointed, and I'll be honest, embarrassed that that would be a potential step that we would even look at. I get it that there's some individuals that some of you may not like more than others, but that should not be a hindrance on someone to trying to do their job and trying to understand each subject before it comes in front of the board. So I guess that's my little 2 cents, and I just wanted to make sure that's addressed, saying Ottawa County already does a vast majority on every single one of the committees, and we need to respect one another as well. And it comes both sides. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's a two-way street. but we need to just make sure we respect one another.
Sure.
And know that we're all here trying to do the best job we can too.
Yeah. And the reason they're able to do that is because they run it according to the Open Meetings Act, and
Right.
we do as well, our subcommittees, I'm proud to say, so.
Correct.
Yeah. Becky?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Don?
I just comment, I thought the public was very knowledgeable, they were friendly, it was professional. I think Jeff did an awesome job, really put an awful lot of time into it. And I think the thing to emphasize is you people volunteer. So your meeting went well with you tonight, thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Actually, I have one more thing because, I didn't think about it until Ryan touched on it, but one thing that after the last meeting, I'm like, man, Ryan was here and he missed that. Everything that went on at the last meeting. And I went home and, I was kind of disappointed. I was kind of saddened. And I'm not naming names, but some people have, there's a couple that call themselves Christians, but they're false witness. Some on multiple occasions, others took the opportunity last week. And that just saddens me, because I think we're better than that. And I don't know what the long game is on that. Maybe a fear of 24, I don't know. But it was real disappointing. It was kind of a heartbreaker for me. And usually that stuff that I come home and I'm like, I can't believe it. And I'm a little bit upset. This one I was just like, I was sad. I was disappointed. But I'm like, I told my wife it is what it is. I got thick skin. I signed up for it. So duly noted, and it will be addressed.
Yeah. To be fair, there's no policy change before the board right now. So, okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.